before anything began. Before space stretched and time ticked, what was there? To answer this, we must strip away our usual way of thinking. We live inside time. We measure change. We count moments. We think in sequences, first this, then that. But the question of what came before time pushes us past the limits of that thinking. Let's start with what we mean by time. Time isn't just the numbers on a clock or dates on a calendar. It's the framework that lets us notice change. Without time, change makes no sense. A star doesn't form, a planet doesn't spin, a thought doesn't pass. Time lets things happen, but if time had a beginning, that means there was once a state where things didn't happen. No past, no movement, no cause and effect. This is hard to picture. That's because our brains evolved to understand the world by noticing patterns, causes, and effects. But imagine a frozen screen with nothing on it. Now remove the screen. Then remove the idea of removal. Keep going until there are no places, no distances, no wheres, and no whens. You're now near the idea of before time. Some physicists say time began with the Big Bang. That event marked the start of the universe as we know it. It's not just the beginning of stars and galaxies. It's the beginning of space itself. Time and space form what we call space-time. This isn't just a background stage where the universe plays out. Space-time is the stage. Without it, there is no place to be and no when to exist. So asking what came before is like asking what's north of the North Pole. The question seems clear, but it breaks down once we realize that before only has meaning inside time. Outside time, the word before doesn't apply. That doesn't mean there are no ideas to explore. Some theories say the universe came from a quantum vacuum. This isn't empty space. It's more like a set of physical rules where particles can pop in and out of existence. But even this vacuum needs a framework, some kind of logic, some kind of math to work. That raises a deeper question. Where did that framework come from? Others suggest the universe goes through endless cycles. In these models, our current universe had a previous phase that collapsed before bouncing back into what we now see. These ideas stretch the meaning of time to include eras before the Big Bang. But again, that time may behave in ways that break our usual rules. Imagine a rubber sheet that you stretch, twist, and roll into loops. That's one way to picture space-time in these models. A collapse in one part might lead to expansion in another. It's not that time stops and starts. It folds and shifts, like a wave or a loop. If this is true, then our Big Bang isn't the first. It's just the most recent chapter in a never-ending story. Still, even this looping view doesn't fully solve the question. If cycles go back forever, we hit the idea of infinite regress, something caused by something else, with no true beginning. Some people accept that. Others find it unsatisfying. They want a first cause, a reason anything exists at all. Some philosophers say this is where we hit the limit of science. Science explains how things change. It gives us models that describe motion, force, and energy. But it needs a starting point. It assumes certain things, the laws of logic, the rules of math, the idea that the universe can be studied. It doesn't explain why those rules exist or where they came from. That belongs to metaphysics, the study of existence itself. In metaphysics, some argue that something must exist necessarily. That means it can't not exist. It forms the base for all other things. What that thing is, some call it being, others call it God. Depends on your view. But the idea is that at the root of all change, there is something that doesn't change. At the start of all time, there is something timeless. This idea goes back thousands of years. In ancient Greece, thinkers like Parmenides said that nothing cannot exist. If there were ever nothing, there would still be nothing. So, something must have always existed, even if time and space have not. In modern terms, we might ask, whether the laws of physics exist, even when no universe does. Are they like a code, waiting to be read, or do they only turn on when a universe begins? If the laws exist without space or time, then they may be part of what was before anything else. But if they need a universe to exist, then we still don't know what set that first event in motion. Let's look at another angle. Think about numbers. The number 2 exists as an idea, even if you don't have 2 apples. You don't need to find 2 in the world. It's part of a logical system. Some people think the universe is like that, an expression of deeper rules or forms that exist beyond space and time. These forms don't change, don't move, and don't age. They're just there. This brings us to the idea of mathematical realism. In this view, math isn't just a tool. It's the language of reality. The universe acts the way it does because it follows rules that exist out there in a timeless realm. From this view, before time, there was logic, math, and potential. Time began when that potential unfolded into something real. Of course, all these are models. We don't know for sure. We're trying to explain something that, by definition, lies outside what we can measure. But that doesn't mean it's pointless to try. These questions push us to the edge of what we can know. They make us sharper. They force us to think with care. Imagine you're in a dark room with no windows. You don't know what's outside, but you can knock on the walls. You can listen. You can sense that there's more beyond what you see. That's where we are with the question of what came before time. We don't see it directly, but we can build careful ideas. We can test some. We can rule others out. We may never find a final answer, but we can keep asking better questions. And we can hold in mind the strange, quiet truth that the most basic facts, space, time, cause, might not be the bottom layer of reality. They might be parts of a deeper whole we don't yet understand. If the universe is expanding, the natural question is, what is it expanding into? This feels like a simple idea. When a balloon grows, it stretches into the air around it. When a puddle spreads, it flows into more space on the ground. Our minds reach for that kind of model. We picture the universe as a thing inside something bigger. But when we talk about the universe, we are not dealing with objects inside a box. We are dealing with the box itself. The universe doesn't expand into space. It creates more space as it expands. That's a hard idea to take in, so let's work through it with care. The word universe means everything. That includes all the stars, planets, galaxies, and the space between them. It also includes time. There is no outside in the usual sense because outside means beyond something. But when we talk about the universe, there is no beyond. Space and time are part of the thing doing the expanding. To picture this, think about a two-dimensional surface, like the skin of a balloon. Imagine small ants walking around on it. As you blow up the balloon, the surface stretches. The ants see everything getting farther away from everything else. But they don't see a center. They don't see an edge. To them, the balloon is their whole world. They live on the surface, not in the air outside it. They have no access to a third direction, up or down, because their world is two-dimensional. In this way, the balloon is a rough model for the universe, but with one big difference. Our universe isn't two-dimensional. It's at least three-dimensional plus time. And its expansion isn't happening into a higher space like the balloon is in our room. It's the stretching of the fabric of space itself. Every point in space gets farther from every other point over time. You might wonder where the center of this expansion is. The answer is everywhere. Every galaxy sees every other galaxy moving away. There is no central spot where the explosion started. The Big Bang didn't happen at one point in space. It happened everywhere in space, all at once. That means the expansion is uniform. It looks the same in every direction, no matter where you are. Still, the feeling remains. If space is growing, doesn't that mean there must be some edge? Can't we reach the end of space and look beyond it? Let's pause and think about what we mean by edge. Usually, an edge marks a boundary between one thing and another. The edge of a table separates the wood from the air. The edge of a lake separates water from land. But if space includes everything, then there's nothing it can be next to. No land, no air, no empty void. Just the end of measurement itself. Another way to picture this is by thinking about the Earth's surface. It has no edge. You can walk in one direction forever and never fall off. You may come back to where you started. That's because the surface is curved in a closed shape. It's finite in size but has no boundary. Some scientists believe space might be like that, not flat and endless, but curved in a way we can't directly observe. If that's true, then the universe could be finite yet without edges. But not all models of the universe are closed. Some say it's infinite. In that case, it has no edge simply because it goes on without end. Imagine a straight line that keeps going forever in both directions. There's no edge, just more line. In this view, the universe isn't growing into anything. It's just stretching what already has no limit. You might ask, then, what lies beyond the visible universe, the part we can see? We know the speed of light is fixed. That limits how far we can look. We call that the observable universe. It's a sphere around us, about 46 billion light-years in every direction. But that's just the part of space whose light has reached us. The universe itself could be much larger, or it could be infinite. We don't know for sure. So what's outside the observable universe? Most likely, more of the same. More galaxies, more space, more of the laws we see here. But it's not outside in the same way that another room is outside your door. It's more like standing in a fog where you can only see so far. You know there's more out there, even if you can't see it yet. Could there be a true outside to the whole universe? That depends on the model. Some theories suggest our universe is part of a larger structure called the multiverse. In this view, many universes exist, each with its own space, time, and laws of physics. These universes might be born in a larger field or background. If that's the case, then our universe does have an outside, but it's not space as we know it. It's a different kind of reality entirely. This kind of theory is still speculative. We don't have direct evidence of other universes, but some parts of physics hint at the possibility. For example, in cosmic inflation theory, tiny patches of space might expand into separate universes. These patches would be cut off from each other. Each one would look like a whole universe from the inside, but they'd all be parts of something bigger. Even if this is true, that larger multiverse doesn't give us a clear outside either. It just pushes the edge one step farther. What lies beyond that? Another layer? A new kind of logic? Eventually, we reach the same limit. We can't define outside without space, and space itself is part of what's being described. It's important to understand that our brains are shaped by everyday experience. We evolved to deal with objects, edges, and containers. That makes questions about the universe hard to frame clearly. When we ask what's outside the universe, we may be using words that don't apply. It's like asking what's south of the South Pole. The question uses normal terms in a way that doesn't fit the shape of the thing we're describing. Still, the universe does have structure. It grows. It has a history. It has laws. It has features we can measure. And it has boundaries, not in space, but in what we can observe. Those boundaries shift as time goes on. Light from farther regions reaches us. We keep seeing more, but we never reach an edge. We don't find a wall. We don't see what lies beyond, because beyond isn't a place we can point to. If there's anything outside, it isn't part of space as we know it. It isn't a blank room waiting to be filled. It might be a different order of existence. It might be nothing at all, not even emptiness.
just the absence of space, time, and form.
And that is very hard to picture.
Because our thoughts need space to unfold.
Would reality still exist if no one was there to see it? This sounds like a riddle, but it's also a real question in science and philosophy. On the surface, it seems simple. Of course, things exist whether we look at them or not. A tree in a forest doesn't vanish when we walk away. The moon doesn't blink in and out of sight depending on whether someone is watching. But some parts of physics and thought challenge that view, especially when we look at the world on a very small scale. Let's begin with the everyday world. We can leave a book on a table and come back to find it where we left it. We assume that objects have shape, size, and location, even if we're not there to witness them. This view of reality makes sense. It lines up with how we survive and act in the world. But the moment we look closer, at atoms, particles, and the structure of space, things start to behave in strange ways. Quantum mechanics is the branch of physics that looks at particles and energy at the smallest level. One of its main features is uncertainty. A particle like an electron doesn't have a single fixed location until something interacts with it. Instead, it exists as a spread of possibilities. We describe this using something called a wave function. The wave function doesn't say, the electron is here. It gives a list of all the places it might be, with some places more likely than others. Now here's where the observer comes in. When we measure the electron, say by shining light on it or placing a detector, it shows up in one place. The wave function collapses. Before the measurement, it was a cloud of options. After the measurement, it becomes one outcome. This shift happens when we interact with it. That has led some people to think that reality depends on observation. If no one measures, does the particle stay in limbo? This is called the observer effect. But it doesn't mean that humans control reality with their minds. The word observer in quantum mechanics doesn't have to mean a person. It can be any system that interacts with another in a way that forces it to take on a definite state. A Geiger counter, a photon detector, or even another particle can count as an observer. It's the interaction that matters, not the presence of a human. Still, the idea that measurement affects outcome is strange. Think of Schrödinger's cat. It's a thought experiment. A cat is placed in a box with a device triggered by a quantum event, like a radioactive atom that may or may not decay. Until someone opens the box, the system remains in a mixed state. The cat is both alive and dead. Only when we check do we see one result. This setup shows how weird quantum rules seem when applied to big things. In real life, cats don't exist in both states. Something causes one outcome long before we look. But what? One answer is called decoherence. In this view, quantum systems lose their uncertainty when they interact with larger environments. The air, the box, the atoms in the cat's body. These all cause the wave function to collapse. Observation isn't special. It's just one form of interaction among many. Reality doesn't wait for a human. It just needs contact between systems. Yet, the role of observation is still debated. Some interpretations, like the Copenhagen view, suggest that reality is not fully real until it's measured. Others, like the many worlds interpretation, say the wave function never collapses. Instead, every possible outcome happens, each in a separate branch of the universe. If a particle could be here or there, one universe has it here, another has it there. No collapse. No need for an observer, but infinite worlds. Another approach is called objective collapse. This says wave functions collapse on their own after reaching a certain size or complexity. Measurement just speeds it up. In this view, reality exists independently of observers. Events unfold whether we notice them or not. But again, we don't yet know which of these views is right. We only know that quantum systems behave differently depending on how and when they are measured. Let's step away from quantum mechanics for a moment and think about the universe as a whole. For billions of years, there were no humans. There was no one to look at the stars or study atoms. Did reality exist during all that time? Most scientists say yes. The Earth cooled, oceans formed, dinosaurs lived and died. Light from distant galaxies traveled across space. All of this happened long before we were here to record it. We can test this by looking at evidence. We see light from stars that exploded millions of years ago. We study fossils, rocks, and radiation that tell us about the past. These records point to a world that ran without us. So in this broader view, reality does not need human eyes. It has its own momentum. But some philosophers push back. They ask, what does it mean for something to exist if it's not experienced? Can a color exist if no one sees it? Can pain exist without a creature to feel it? These are hard questions because they mix physics with consciousness. They deal with what it means to know something is real. This leads to a view called idealism. In this view, the mind is the base of all reality. Everything else, matter, time, space, emerges from experience or thought. According to this idea, if there were no observers at all, not even basic awareness, nothing would exist in any meaningful way. But most scientists and philosophers reject this. They argue that physical processes don't need minds to unfold. Minds are part of the universe, not its cause. To test this, imagine a planet in a far-off galaxy. No one from Earth has seen it. No signal has reached us. We have no way to measure it. Does it exist? In the realist view, yes. It has weight. It moves in space. It orbits its star. Rocks sit on its surface, whether we see them or not. The laws of physics work there, just as they do here. Reality is not made of ideas. It's made of things. But again, when we zoom into the quantum scale, we face the fact that measurement plays a role in how outcomes happen. This doesn't mean reality is fake. It means that the small parts of nature don't behave the way large objects do. They follow different rules. Whether those rules point to a deeper truth about reality, that's still open. In the end, we live in a world where both views have weight. Reality seems stable and independent most of the time, but at the edges, we find signs that our role as observers does matter in subtle ways. Whether we ever find a final answer depends on how deep we can go into the structure of the universe and what we're able to see once we get there. Why is there something instead of nothing? That question might be the hardest one we can ask. It's also one of the oldest. People have wondered about it for thousands of years. We know things exist: people, trees, stars, planets. But why should anything exist at all? Why not just nothing? To think about this, we have to get clear on what we mean by nothing. In normal use, nothing just means the absence of something. If a jar is empty, we say there's nothing in it. But even then, there's still space inside the jar: air molecules, gravity, time, rules. If you remove the air, the space remains. If you remove the space, you still have the idea of place. If you remove that too, what's left? The kind of nothing we're talking about here is not a vacuum or an empty room. It's not just no matter or no light. It's the total absence of anything at all. No space, no time, no rules, no math, no fields, no potential, no frame, not even emptiness. It's the lack of being itself. Now ask, why should that kind of nothing not be the case? Why is there something instead? Some say the question doesn't make sense. They argue that once you have something, you can ask why it is there. But you can't ask why reality exists. It just does. It's a fact. not a puzzle. But others say we should still ask. It's not enough to accept that something exists. We want to know why. If we never ask, we might miss something deep. One idea is that something must exist because nothingness is unstable. In physics, the quantum vacuum is a field with energy. It isn't true nothing, but it shows that even empty space can produce particles. Fluctuations can make things pop into existence. But that field needs rules. It follows laws. Those laws must exist before anything can happen. So we're back to the big question. Why do those laws exist? Some physicists say maybe the laws are just the way they are. Maybe there's no reason, but that feels like a gap in the chain of explanation. We're used to asking what caused something or what supports it. If a car moves, we want to know what powers it. If a tree grows, we want to know what feeds it. If the universe exists, we want to know what holds it up. Others say that maybe the universe caused itself. In some theories, space and time can form from quantum processes. Maybe the universe is like a loop with no outside, no beginning, no end. In that view, it didn't come from anything, it just is. It's not like a house built on land. It's like a circle with no edge. But that still leaves a hole. Why is the loop there instead of no loop at all? Some thinkers take a different route. They say that something exists because nothing was never a real option. In this view, it's not that something beat nothing, it's that nothing was never possible to begin with. Just as 2 + 2 must equal 4, maybe existence is necessary. If so, then nothing isn't the default, being is. In this line of thought, the question flips. You won't ask, why is there something? You ask, how could there not be something? To explain this, let's consider numbers. The number 0 exists, but only because we have rules for math. 0 is a concept, it's part of a system. The rules of math allow it. In the same way, maybe nothing is just a concept that makes sense only inside a system where something already exists. If true nothing has no frame, then it can't even not exist. It becomes a non-option. Some philosophers argue that there must be at least one necessary thing. That is, something that cannot not exist. Everything else, tables, clouds, stars, depends on other things. But maybe one thing doesn't depend on anything else. It exists by nature. It doesn't begin. It doesn't break. It's just there. If that's true, then that necessary thing is the root of all the rest. Everything else flows from it. What could that necessary thing be? Some say it's the laws of logic. Others say it's math. Others say it's consciousness. Others say it's a kind of being or force. Some people call it God. Others don't give it a name. But the idea stays the same. If anything exists, then something must have the power to be, without needing a reason from outside itself. You can test this in your mind. Try to imagine nothing, not empty space, not a black void, not silence, but real nothing. No things, no time, no potential, no you to think about it. If you're honest, you can't hold that picture. Your mind needs something to work with. The very act of asking the question assumes a framework. It uses language, thought, and rules. All of those are parts of existence. Now flip the question. If there were truly nothing, could the question even arise? No. So the fact that we're here to ask means something exists. And the fact that something exists means that nothing might not be a real choice. It might just be a label for a state that can't be. Still, the mystery remains. Even if something must exist, why this something? Why this universe with these particles, these rules, and these outcomes? Why not some other mix or a random swirl of things? One idea is the anthropic principle. It says we live in a universe that allows life because only such a universe can have observers. If the rules were different, we wouldn't be here to notice. So we shouldn't be surprised we see a life-friendly universe. We couldn't see any other kind. But this idea explains why we see this universe, not why there is a universe at all. Another idea is the multiverse. Maybe there are countless universes,
each with different laws. In that view, this universe is just one of many.
We live in this one because it happens to support life. But the multiverse doesn't solve the problem. It moves the question up a level. Why does the multiverse exist? Why does anything exist rather than not? We still don't know the answer. We can build models, we can write equations, we can guess at causes, but we may never fully grasp the root. The question, why is there something rather than nothing, may point beyond what our tools can measure. Even so, the question is not useless. It helps us see the limits of what we know. It draws a line around what we take for granted, and it reminds us that being alive in a universe filled with things is not something we can explain by habit. It's something that calls for attention. Look up at the stars on a quiet night, and it's hard not to wonder, are we alone? Is human intelligence the first of its kind, just starting out on the edge of one galaxy? Or are we the last flicker of thought in a universe that has already seen other minds rise and fall? Both options carry weight. Both raise deep questions about time, scale, and what it means to be intelligent in the first place. The age of the universe is about 13.8 billion years. Earth has been around for about 4.5 billion. Humans, modern Homo sapiens, have only existed for about 300,000 years. If you think of all that time as a 24-hour clock, we've been here for just the last few seconds. That alone makes it hard to believe we are the first. There was so much time before us, and there is likely even more time ahead. That gives plenty of room for other intelligence to have come and gone, or to appear in the future. But we've looked. We've searched nearby stars for signs of life. We've listened for radio signals, watched for strange patterns of light, scanned planets for chemical fingerprints. So far, we've found no clear evidence of intelligent life beyond Earth. This puzzle is known as the Fermi paradox. If intelligent life is common, why haven't we seen it? Some answers suggest that intelligence is rare. Maybe the steps needed to go from simple cells to thinking creatures are harder than we think. Life on Earth began about 3.8 billion years ago, but it stayed simple for a long time. Complex cells didn't appear for nearly 2 billion years. Multicellular life came later. Brains took even longer, and only one species, ours, has developed the kind of intelligence that builds machines and sends signals into space. Maybe this long, slow climb is the rule, not the exception. Or maybe it's not just hard, it's unlikely. Even with billions of planets, the odds might be stacked against intelligence. That would make us rare, not because life is rare, but because thinking life is. There's also the idea that intelligence tends to destroy itself. Civilizations may reach a point where they build tools powerful enough to ruin their own world. Nuclear weapons, runaway climate change, artificial systems they can't control. If that's true, then intelligence might bloom only to burn out. We may be early, but we may also be near the edge of our own time. It's also possible that intelligence changes in ways we can't track. Imagine a civilization 1,000,000 years ahead of us. They might not use radio waves. They might not live on planets. They might not build in ways we'd recognize. They could live in digital systems, spread across machines, stored in light, or in patterns we can't detect. We could be surrounded by signs of intelligence and still not see them. That raises another question. What do we mean by intelligence? Is it just the ability to reason, to solve problems, to build tools? Or does it also include the ability to change one's environment, to shape the future, to reflect on one's own thoughts? If intelligence includes memory, foresight, planning, and culture, then humans are clearly intelligent. But those traits might not show up in the same way elsewhere. An intelligent alien species might not build cities. They might live in oceans and use sound or chemicals to think together. Or they might be like colonies, more like bees or ants, where no one part is smart, but the whole system behaves in a complex way. We look for minds like ours, but there's no reason to think all intelligence must match the human mold. Still, even with these possibilities, the silence in space is hard to ignore. One idea is that we are indeed the first, that life arose on Earth very early in the universe's life, and we were lucky to climb the steps toward intelligence faster than most. That would put us at the beginning, a kind of first draft of intelligent life, just learning to walk. In that case, what we do next matters. If we last, if we spread, if we learn to manage our world and ourselves, then we may start a chain of intelligent life that continues long after us. We may seed other planets. We may build systems that outlast our bodies. But that path is still ahead, and it's not guaranteed. The other option is that we are not the first, but the last. That before us, other intelligent beings lived in this galaxy or beyond. They rose, fought, built, and then disappeared. We don't know how. Their traces may be gone or buried in time. Their signals may have faded. Their worlds may have crumbled. If so, then we live in the twilight. We are the final echo of a long song, the last voice in a quiet hall. That idea carries a kind of sadness, but it also gives us a role, not just to exist, but to remember, to imagine what came before, and to speak while we can. Or maybe the truth lies somewhere between. Maybe intelligence comes and goes, like stars. Some rise early, some burn out, others flicker into being far in the future. In that view, we are neither first nor last. We are just one light among many, rare perhaps, but not alone. It's hard to know where we stand because we don't yet know how long intelligence can last. We've had science for just a few hundred years. We've had technology that can destroy the world for less than 100. We've only left Earth in the last few generations. We are new, we are fragile, and we are still learning what kind of beings we want to be. Imagine another planet, 10,000 light years away. A species like ours once walked there. They had language, machines, art. They looked up and wondered if they were alone. Then they vanished. Disease, war, collapse, who knows? Now only dust remains. Their signals are gone, their buildings lost. No one remembers them, except maybe us, if we ever find their trace. Or imagine a future 1,000,000 years from now. We are gone, but something we built endures. A satellite drifts between stars. A fragment of code runs in a machine on a distant moon. Somewhere, a new form of life reads our messages, studies our maps, learns our names. In that sense, we are not first or last. We are part of a chain. The stars are quiet, but the story isn't over. We may be a beginning, a middle, or an end. We don't know yet, but we are here. And that, for now, is enough to ask the question. Imagine falling into a black hole. You pass the event horizon, the point where nothing can escape, not even light. From outside, it looks like you've frozen in place, stretched thin and vanished. But what happens inside? No one has ever seen it. The laws of physics start to break down. Time and space trade roles. The normal rules no longer apply. Now ask, what if this strange space inside a black hole is not just a dead end, but a universe of its own? Some scientists think this might be more than an idea. It might be real. The theory goes like this. Every black hole might hide a new universe inside it. That includes our own universe. Maybe our Big Bang didn't start from nothing. Maybe it came from the collapse of a star in another universe. When that star died, it formed a black hole. That black hole didn't just crush matter. It created space and time on the other side. We are living in that other side. To follow this idea, let's start with what a black hole is. When a massive star burns out, its core collapses. Gravity wins. The mass gets squeezed into a tiny point called a singularity. Around it forms an event horizon. That's the edge. Once something crosses it, there's no turning back. The pull is too strong. On the outside, black holes look simple. They're defined by three things: mass, spin, and charge. But on the inside, things may be very different. General relativity, the theory that explains gravity, says time slows down as you approach the event horizon. At the center, space becomes so curved that all paths lead inward. But we don't know what happens past the singularity. Relativity breaks there. Quantum theory, our best model for tiny things, doesn't agree with what general relativity says at that point. Some physicists try to fix this by uniting quantum theory with gravity. One idea that comes from this effort is that the singularity may not be a point. It may be a bounce, a shift from collapse to expansion. If that's true, then instead of ending, the matter falling into the black hole could create a new region of space that expands outward. That would look from the inside like a big bang. Time would start again. Space would grow. That's exactly how our universe behaves. Our universe is expanding. It began from a tiny, hot state and has grown ever since. The shape of space follows equations from general relativity. Those same equations describe the inside of a black hole. If you flip the signs and trace the math in reverse, you can model a black hole as a starting point for a new universe. The parent universe forms a black hole. The child universe grows inside it. From our side, we see a universe. From the other side, someone sees a black hole. Picture this. In a vast universe, a giant star dies. It collapses and forms a black hole. That black hole grows, but deep inside, a new region of space starts to unfold. It grows fast. It cools. Matter forms. Atoms bond. Galaxies spin into place. Stars light up. On a small rocky planet, life begins. Billions of years later, one life form looks up and wonders where everything came from. The idea that black holes spawn new universes also gives an answer to a puzzle. Why do the rules of our universe seem so fine-tuned? The forces of nature, the strength of gravity, the charge of the electron, the speed of light, all have exact values. If any of these were just a little different, stars couldn't form, atoms wouldn't hold together, or life would be impossible. It feels unlikely. Some say this is luck. Some say it's because there are many universes, and we live in the one where life can happen. But if universes are born inside black holes, then maybe each new universe inherits the rules of its parent, but with slight changes, like a child with its own traits. Some changes lead to dead universes. No structure, no stars. Some changes lead to more black holes. That means more child universes. Over time, the process favors universes that make many black holes. If those universes also happen to allow stars and life, then we have a reason to expect them. This is called cosmological natural selection. It's like evolution, but for universes. It doesn't require a designer. It just needs variation, inheritance, and selection. Each universe passes on its traits through black holes. The ones that make more black holes make more children. Traits that help black hole formation become common. That may include the traits that allow galaxies and stars, and life. We can't test this idea directly. We can't go into a black hole and report back. But we can look for clues. One clue might be the total number of black holes. If our universe is set up to make many, that fits the theory. Another clue might be whether small changes in physical constants lead to fewer black holes. If that's true, then the values we see today may be the ones that work best. That doesn't prove the theory, but it supports the logic. The black hole universe idea also gives us a new way to think about the Big Bang. Instead of a one-time event, it becomes part of a cycle. Universes create black holes. Black holes create universes. The process has no clear start or end. Each generation leads to the next. Our universe may be part of a long family line stretching back through time and forward into the future. It also changes how we see ourselves. We may live not at the start of all things, but deep inside the aftermath of something else. We may look at black holes not as ends, but as doors. If that's true, then each black hole in our sky may be the seed of another world, another space, another time. Think of a black hole at the center of a galaxy. It spins fast. It pulls in gas and light. It shapes the galaxy around it. And yet, hidden beyond the event horizon, something else may be happening. A new universe may be forming. A place where time ticks, where stars shine, where someone else wonders where they came from. This idea won't change the way we live day to day, but it changes how we see the big picture. Our universe might not be alone. It might not be the first. It might not be the last. It might be one link in a long chain of creation, born from collapse, growing through time, and someday giving rise to something new. In the multiverse theory, there isn't just one universe. There are many, maybe even an infinite number. Each one could have its own version of you. In some, you live a life much like the one you know now. In others, small choices or random events have taken your life in a different direction. Some of these versions of you might already be dead. To understand how that could work, think about what the multiverse means. In one version, based on quantum mechanics, every possible outcome of every event happens, but in different branches of reality. This is called the many worlds interpretation. If you flip a coin, it comes up heads in one universe and tails in another. When scaled up to bigger events, that means there are worlds where you turned left instead of right, took one job instead of another, or made it through a dangerous illness, or didn't. Imagine you cross the street one day. In one universe, a car stops in time. In another, it doesn't. That small difference leads to very different outcomes. The moment your life ends in that universe, another version of you continues on elsewhere. That doesn't mean you feel those changes. Each version of you only knows its own path. But it does mean that there are branches of reality where you are already gone. This raises a strange idea. In a universe where death can go either way, is there always a branch where you survive? Some physicists have explored that thought in something called quantum immortality. It's not a proven theory, but the idea is that from your own point of view, you never die. In every moment where your life could end, there is at least one version of the universe where it doesn't. You lose consciousness in all the versions where you die, but your awareness always tracks the version where you live. Let's say you have a serious illness. In most branches, it kills you, but in one small sliver of possibility, you recover. That version of the universe carries on. You don't notice the others because your consciousness is tied to the path where you're still alive. In this view, death never arrives for the observer. You always pass into a version of events where you're still going, but the odds of that version shrink over time. This idea has limits. For one thing, you are made of matter. Your body ages. It breaks down. Cells die. Even if there is always some version of you where a crisis is avoided, you won't stay alive forever. At some point, your body will fail in every version of events. The universe follows physical laws. Nothing made of atoms lasts without change. So in many universes, you're already dead. In some, you're still alive. Over time, the number where you're alive keeps shrinking. Think of it like a tree. The trunk is the start of your life. As time goes on, branches split off. Some lead to long lives, others end early. Some are peaceful, others are sudden. At any moment, you're walking along one branch. You don't feel the others, but they are part of the full tree of what could have been. In this model, death becomes a local fact. You die in some branches, not in others, but that doesn't change how death feels. You won't know you've died in another universe. Consciousness doesn't shift from one version of you to another. Each version is sealed off. So if there is a version of you that is already dead in another universe, it doesn't touch the one where you're reading this now. There's also a practical point. We can't travel between universes. We can't send messages across them or see what's happening on the other side. These aren't parallel worlds we can visit. They're sealed off by the nature of quantum mechanics. So while it may be true that other versions of you have died, There is no way to test that or feel its impact. The death of another you isn't your death. Still, it's worth thinking about what this means. If you're already dead in another universe, it means death is not rare. It's not just a one-time event. It's a spread of outcomes that includes both life and death. That can make life feel more fragile, but also more specific. The fact that you're alive right now in this version means this branch has carried on. You've avoided, for now, the many other paths where you didn't. It can also bring a sense of humility. You're not the only version of yourself. There are others, some lucky, some not. Some lived full lives, others ended early. That reminds us that life is not guaranteed. It's something that continues until it doesn't. Now think about this on a bigger scale. The universe itself could die. In some branches, it may already have. Stars can burn out, galaxies can fade, space can collapse or stretch until it tears. Each universe in the multiverse may have its own lifespan. Some may be short-lived, some may last forever. If black holes create new universes, as some theories suggest, then death may also lead to new beginnings. In that case, even a universe that ends might give rise to others. But again, the parts don't share information. What ends in one place is gone to those inside it. From a scientific point of view, we don't yet know if the multiverse is real. It's a theory that fits some models of physics, but we can't yet test it directly. That means we must treat these ideas carefully. They are not facts. They are tools to help us think about what might be true. Still, the idea that other versions of you may already be gone is not science fiction. It follows from the logic of the many worlds interpretation. If that view is correct, then your death is not a single point. It's a spread of events already in progress across other paths you will never see. So in another universe, yes, you may already be dead. The version of you that walked into danger, that got the bad news, that met the end sooner than expected, those versions exist. But the fact that you're here, asking the question, means this version is still going. This branch is still open. And for now, that's the one that matters.
There is a silence to eternity that most people don't think about. We talk about eternal life like it's a prize, something worth chasing. The idea shows up in myths, religions, and science fiction. It's usually wrapped in light, surrounded by peace, or filled with boundless joy. But when you strip away the symbols and promises, you're left with a stark fact. Eternal life is the absence of an ending. Not just a long life, but one without limit. You continue, always. At first, that might seem appealing. With infinite time, there's no rush. You could master every language, learn every skill, climb every mountain, build whatever you want. You could fix mistakes, explore ideas, and make amends. There's time to reflect and time to start over. That sounds like freedom. But freedom without boundaries can slowly twist into something else. Think about what gives meaning to a moment. A conversation matters because it will end. A day feels important because there are only so many. A story is powerful because it stops. Life, as we know it, is shaped by its limit. Death is not just the end of breathing. It's the frame that holds everything else in place. It's what makes each decision count. Take that away, and the shape of life begins to dissolve. Over time, decades, centuries, millennia, routine sets in. You wake, you act, you rest. The calendar stretches until it loses detail. You start to forget things, people you knew, places you lived, feelings you had. You try to hold on, but memory erodes. If you forget enough of yourself, are you still you, or just a body and a mind that continue out of habit? Now consider other people. If only a few live forever, you'll watch others age and die, again and again. Friends, partners, children, entire cultures. Each time you connect, it's temporary. You might try to protect yourself by staying distant. You might tell yourself not to get too attached, but then what's left? Relationships lose depth, emotions flatten. You stop expecting anything new. If everyone lives forever, you face a different problem. No one leaves. Societies swell. Generations pile up. Space runs out. Resources thin. Either you expand forever, into space, into digital worlds, into places not yet imagined, or you stagnate, stuck in a world that can't change fast enough to keep up with its own immortals. In that world, boredom becomes its own kind of gravity. Nothing pulls you forward. Memory becomes a weight. You carry centuries of grief, shame, love, pride, mistakes, and unfinished plans. You might try to forget. You might succeed. But then you lose the thread of who you were. You might try to reinvent yourself. Change your name, your job, your outlook. But after a while, reinvention becomes repetition. Even novelty becomes familiar. And then there's the question of desire. Most things you want because time is short. You're hungry, so you eat. You're lonely, so you reach out. You're bored, so you create. But with infinite time, hunger fades into numbness. Urgency disappears. The need to act thins out. You can always do it later, so you don't. You may try to stay curious, to seek challenges, solve puzzles, explore distant planets. But curiosity feeds on mystery. Once you've answered every question, learned every law of nature, you walk into a room you've never seen before. Someone says something ordinary. A chair creaks. A bird calls outside. And suddenly, you feel it. You've been here before. You've heard these words. You know what's coming next. But you also know that can't be true. This is your first time here. You can't predict what happens next. Not really. But for a moment, it all feels familiar. That's déjà vu. Most people experience déjà vu at some point. Some feel it once or twice a year, others more often. It usually lasts a few seconds. It doesn't hurt, but it can feel unsettling. Your brain tells you that what's happening now has already happened, but your memory insists it hasn't. That raises a question. Is déjà vu just a trick of the brain or something deeper? Could it be a sign of a glitch between timelines? The simplest idea comes from neuroscience. The brain stores memories in many parts. It processes sights, sounds, smells, and feelings in different areas. Sometimes those signals get mixed. One part of the brain may fire just a little too early. Another may fire out of sync. This delay may confuse the brain into thinking the present moment has already been stored as a memory. Think of it like a song that skips for half a second and plays a tiny part twice. The second time feels familiar, even though the song never actually repeated. Déjà vu might work the same way. The present moment feels like a memory, even though it's not. There's also a theory about the brain's memory system. The hippocampus, a small part deep inside the brain, helps form new memories. Some researchers believe déjà vu happens when this system makes a false positive. It tags something as familiar, even though you haven't seen it before. That may happen when a new scene matches a pattern your brain has stored. Imagine walking down a street in a city you've never visited. But the color of the buildings, the smell in the air, and the way someone walks past, all of that matches a memory from somewhere else. Your brain pulls that pattern up and tells you, this is familiar. But when you try to recall the memory, there's nothing there. The match is shallow. It just feels deep. Still, those explanations don't fully satisfy everyone. Some people feel déjà vu so strongly that they believe they've lived the moment before, exactly, down to the smallest detail. Not just a feeling, but a certainty. The room, the sounds, the movements, it's all the same. They don't just sense a memory, they expect the next moment to unfold a certain way. And sometimes, they're right. That's where the idea of multiple timelines comes in. Some believe that reality is not a single thread, but a web of many paths. Every choice, every event, every turn might create a new branch. In this view, timelines run beside each other. Some almost match, others drift far apart. But what if for a second, two timelines touch? What if your awareness slips into one that nearly matches your own? If that happens, you might feel like you've seen something before, because in that other timeline, you have. That could explain why the feeling is so specific, why you might sense what someone's about to say, or how an event will unfold, even though you've never been there. It could be like standing between two mirrors. The images reflect each other, nearly identical, but not quite. Your brain picks up on those small shifts and registers them as both familiar and strange. You're in one moment, but your mind touches another. In science fiction, people often talk about parallel worlds, infinite versions of Earth, infinite versions of you. In some, you make one choice. In others, a different one. Most of the time, you can't sense those other versions. But maybe déjà vu is a small tear, a moment when awareness slips sideways. Even physics doesn't rule this out completely. Quantum theory allows for many possibilities. Particles don't settle into one state until they're measured. That's called superposition. Some interpretations suggest that each possible outcome becomes real, but in its own world. That's the many worlds interpretation. It says all outcomes happen, just not all in the same universe. So what does that mean for déjà vu? It could mean that when we experience it, we're not just remembering, we're syncing with a nearby branch. That might explain why the feeling is strong but brief. The timelines line up for a second, then drift apart again. Some people report déjà vu in dreams. They see something in sleep, then months later, they experience it. Not a close match, an exact one. The same room, the same words, the same sequence of events. But they can't trace when they dreamed it, only that they did. That suggests that déjà vu might not just be a glitch. It might be memory, but memory from a different kind of source. Dreams, after all, are strange. The brain makes images, stories, and emotions while the body rests. Some researchers think dreams help sort and file memories. Others think they help solve problems. But maybe dreams also let us glance at other paths, routes not taken, versions of life we'll never live. Déjà vu, then, might be the moment when one of those glimpses comes true. Another version of this idea comes from people who believe in past lives or reincarnation. They say déjà vu could be a fragment of another life, not in the future, but in the past. The setting, the sound, the feeling, it all matches something lived long ago. Not just familiar, lived. But unlike normal memory, these moments aren't stored in the brain. They're carried by something deeper. Science doesn't support that idea, but it doesn't fully disprove it either. Memory is complex. Consciousness is not yet understood. We know what brains do, but not how awareness works at the deepest level. That leaves space for mystery. There's also a feeling tied to déjà vu that's hard to explain. It's not just "I've seen this." It's "this matters." A sense that the moment holds weight, that it's part of something larger, that something is about to shift. Some people report that a strong case of déjà vu comes just before a big change. A move, a loss, a choice. That could be coincidence, but it adds to the sense that something real is happening, even if we can't define it. Others describe déjà vu as a message, not in words, but in feeling. A soft nudge from something outside time. A signal that you're on the right track or the wrong one, that you've reached a key point. In this view, déjà vu is like a ripple in a larger flow. You don't control it, but you can notice it. You can ask why it appeared.
The truth is, we don't fully understand déjà vu. We can name it, we can study it, we can explain parts of it, but not all. The brain is good at making sense of the world. It fills in gaps, it finds patterns, but sometimes those patterns point to something we can't yet test. Whether déjà vu is a misfire, a memory, or a slip between timelines, it reminds us that not everything is simple. Some moments carry a depth we can feel, but not trace. A presence without cause, a signal without a source, a familiar echo from a path we can't quite see. You open your eyes in the morning and start to become aware. The light comes in. You feel your body. You remember who you are. These small acts of attention happen every day, but they point to something much larger. You are aware not just of yourself, but of the world around you. You notice patterns, you learn, you ask questions. That ability might not just be a product of the universe. It might be the way the universe comes to know itself. You are made of atoms. Those atoms came from stars. Before that, they came from simpler particles. Hydrogen formed just after the Big Bang. Stars fused hydrogen into heavier elements. Some stars exploded and spread those elements through space. That material came together again to form new stars, planets, and eventually, life. You are part of that chain. Your body is made of carbon, oxygen, iron, and nitrogen, all forged in stars. The universe didn't just make you, it made itself into you. That's not poetry, it's physics. But the strange thing is not just that the universe makes people. It's that people then turn around and ask where they came from. They look out into space. They study the stars. They take apart atoms. They model the start of time. In doing that, the universe is, in a real sense, studying itself. Your eyes are made of molecules that reflect and absorb light. That light may have traveled for years before it reached you. When you look at the stars, you're seen into the past. Your brain turns those signals into images. Then it asks questions. What is that? How far is it? What does it mean? That process, turning raw input into knowledge, is how the universe gains structure. Before living things, there was matter and energy, but no questions, no awareness, no memory. A rock doesn't know what it is. A mountain doesn't recognize that it exists. But somewhere along the line, some arrangement of atoms gained that ability. And now, here you are. You don't just react to the world. You reflect on it. You model the past. You guess about the future. You study your own thoughts. That feedback loop is rare in nature. It may be what separates life from non-life and mind from instinct. And once that loop begins, it grows. Children ask questions. Adults try to answer. Societies build tools to ask deeper ones. Telescopes stretch our eyes. Computers stretch our memory. Equations stretch our minds. We use them to look further out and further in, into galaxies, into black holes, into cells, into code. We map the structure of space, the shape of DNA, the way energy moves through time. The better we model the world, the more we can do. And the more we do, the more we learn. This process has no final goal, but it has direction. The cosmos begins with simplicity. Then it moves toward complexity. Atoms bind, molecules form, cells group together, brains arise, brains make tools. Tools make culture. Culture builds systems of knowledge. Each step depends on the one before, but the result is something new. You are one of those results. You are not the center of the universe, but you are a center of awareness within it. Through your senses, your mind, and your memory, the universe now has the ability to reflect on itself. You can ask what stars are, what time is, why anything exists. Those questions don't float in space. They happen inside your brain. They are the cosmos, processing its own data. Think of a mirror. When you stand in front of one, you see your reflection. You recognize yourself. That act requires light, a surface, a brain, and a sense of self. In that way, you are a kind of mirror too, a reflective surface where the universe becomes aware of itself, not in a mystical way, but in a practical one. Your thoughts arise from physical structures. Those structures come from nature, and those thoughts allow nature to see itself in new ways. That doesn't mean the universe has a purpose in making people. There's no evidence that stars formed so that humans could look at them. But once life appears, once mind develops, awareness becomes part of the system. Consciousness is not an outside force. It's a feature of matter in a very specific arrangement. And when it appears, the universe changes. It gains observers. It gains questions. It gains perspective. Perspective matters. A particle doesn't know where it is. It just follows the rules. But you can know. You can locate yourself in time and space. You can say, I am here, and I remember being there. You can compare what is with what was, and imagine what could be. That function, tracking change and meaning, is something matter didn't have before life. And you don't just reflect the world. You act in it. You make choices. You shape the future. You can write, build, teach, destroy. Your actions echo beyond your body. That ripple changes how the universe unfolds. It's not always large, but it's real. One decision leads to another. One person affects others. And across time, those ripples shape what the universe becomes. You are not alone in this. Billions of minds have existed. Each one carried a slightly different view. Each one added detail. Stories, art, laws, science. These are not just human things. They are cosmic reflections, shaped by one species in one corner of one galaxy. But they are also part of how the universe knows what it's made of, where it came from, how it works. If consciousness ever arises elsewhere, in some other galaxy, in some other form, it may also turn outward. It may ask, what is this? It may build its own mirrors. It may write its own stories. The specific details may be different, but the process would be the same. A small part of the universe trying to understand the whole. And even if we are the only ones for now, even if life is rare and self-awareness rarer still, it's still true that this planet contains a kind of mind the universe didn't have before. And that mind is looking outward, learning, asking, wondering. You don't need to believe that life has a cosmic mission. You don't need to think that humans are special in a spiritual sense. But it's clear that we have a rare role. We are made of matter that asks what matter is. We are made of time that wonders where time goes. We are made of star stuff that studies the stars. Every time you learn something new, reflect on a memory, or wonder about the shape of space, that's not just your brain doing its job. That's the universe, organized in a way that allows reflection. And every question you ask becomes part of a process that started billions of years ago, when simple particles cooled, clumped, and eventually became aware. You open your eyes in the morning. Light comes through the window. You know where you are. You feel your body. You remember your name. You get up, move through your day, make choices, feel emotions, and expect tomorrow to come, like it always does. Everything feels solid, familiar, real. But what if none of it is? What if you're still asleep, and always have been? What if this life, the one you think you're living, is just one long dream? That question sounds strange at first, but it has been asked many times. Philosophers, mystics, and scientists have all wondered about it in different ways. It's not just a trick of thought. It's a real challenge to the way we understand reality. Because if this is a dream and you haven't woken up yet, how would you know? Start with what dreams are. When you sleep, your brain makes images, stories, and events. You move through places. You meet people. You feel real emotions. But none of it is happening in the world outside your head. It's all made from signals in your brain. While you're in the dream, you often don't question it.
You accept that the strange world around you makes sense. Only when you wake up do you realize how odd it was. Now, think about your waking life. You see colors, hear sounds, touch objects. But all of that happens through the brain too. Your eyes send signals, your ears send signals, your nerves do the same. The brain turns all that input into a picture of the world. But you never touch the world directly. You only experience what your mind builds from those signals. In that sense, both dreaming and waking life come down to patterns in the brain. The difference is consistency. Dreams shift fast, scenes change, logic breaks down. Waking life feels more stable. Time moves in one direction. Physical laws stay the same. But what if that stability is just part of the dream? A dream doesn't have to be wild to be unreal. It only has to convince you not to question it. Some people have dreams that last for what feels like years. They build whole lives in their sleep. They form relationships, go through loss, find purpose. Then they wake up and realize none of it happened. The shock is deep. They remember the emotions, the lessons, the details, but they have no proof it was real. That kind of experience shows how strong and full a dream can be. It also raises a harder question. What if the life you think is real is just a deeper version of that? One way to test reality is through memory. You know this life is yours because you remember yesterday. You remember childhood. You have a story that leads to now. But dreams can do that too. You can dream a life where your memory stretches back years, even though the dream only lasted minutes. Memory is not always a solid line. It can be planted. It can be false. You believe in the past because it feels consistent, but that might be a function of the dream itself. You might also trust the rules of physics. Gravity works. Time moves forward. Cause leads to effect. But some dreams follow rules too. You can have a dream where everything works as expected. The sun rises, cars move, people talk in full conversations. That doesn't prove it's real. It just proves the dream holds together. If this life is a dream, it may be a very well-made one. That doesn't make it real. Lucid dreaming shows another layer. In a lucid dream, you realize you're dreaming. You gain control. You can change the world around you. You can fly, reshape the scene, or ask questions. But lucid dreams feel just as real as normal ones, sometimes more so. When people wake up, they carry clear memories of what happened. That tells us that self-awareness can happen inside a dream. So even if you feel aware, grounded, and thoughtful, that doesn't mean you're awake. Now take this further. If this is a dream, who is the dreamer? It might still be you, just a deeper version. Not the you reading this now, but the one who fell asleep and began the dream that became your life. That version may be asleep in a bed in some other world, in some other time. Or that version may not be a person at all. The dreamer might be something else entirely, a mind, a system, a field of awareness testing different shapes of experience. You might be the dream it made to understand itself. This idea also appears in philosophy. In ancient China, a thinker named Zhuangzi dreamed he was a butterfly. When he woke up, he asked, was he a man who dreamed he was a butterfly, or a butterfly dreaming he was a man? That question still stands. If this life is a dream, you may not know what you were before it started. In modern times, thinkers like René Descartes also asked how we can know we're not dreaming. He said that senses can be fooled, experience can be false. He looked for one thing he could not doubt. He found it in the act of thinking itself. I think, therefore I am. Even in a dream, if you think, then something exists. But what that something is, what its nature is, remains unknown. Now think about technology. In virtual reality, you can build a world that fools the eyes and ears. You can walk through a city that doesn't exist, talk to people who aren't real. If this life is a dream, it might also be a kind of simulation.
not one made with wires and code, but one made with thought and memory. A dream can simulate pain, joy, time, and self. If it's deep enough, the simulation becomes invisible. There are stories of people who never wake up. They fall into comas or deep sleep, and their minds build worlds. Some wake years later and must let go of everything they thought was real. If this life is one of those, then waking may still lie ahead. That would mean that death is not the end, but the signal that the dream is done. That thought can be strange, even frightening, but it can also be freeing. If this is a dream, it means you're part of something creative, something rich, something built with care. Your actions still matter. Your thoughts still echo. What you do here shapes the dream. Maybe that's the point. Not to wake up, but to live with awareness inside the dream. You may never know for sure. Maybe that's built into the design. But the fact that you can ask the question, the fact that you stop and wonder, might be a kind of waking all by itself. Not full, not final, but enough to notice that what you call reality might only be part of the story. You sit down to read or focus on something important. Out of nowhere, a sentence pops into your mind. It might have nothing to do with what you're doing. It could be an old memory, a line from a song, or a picture of something random. You didn't ask for it, you didn't plan it, but there it is. Your mind brought it up. You don't know why, and in that moment, you might ask, am I the one thinking this, or is it just happening? We're used to thinking of ourselves as the thinker. We believe we control what happens in our heads. When we solve a problem, make a list, or hold a conversation, it feels like we're steering the process. And in those moments, we do shape our thoughts. We guide them. We respond. We engage. But in quiet moments, or in times of stress, fear, or boredom, thoughts can feel different. They appear fast. They repeat. They pull attention away from what matters. It starts to feel like thoughts are not chosen. They arrive on their own. The brain never stops working. Even when you sleep, it continues to produce activity. It makes dreams. It replays events. It reacts to feelings. When you're awake, it does the same, just with more outside input. It takes in sound, light, words, and sensations. It runs its own background processes. Those include memory, pattern matching, emotion, and habit. Thoughts often rise from that mix before you even notice. You don't decide to remember a painful moment from years ago. It just appears. You don't choose to have a strange image flash through your mind. It happens. You might then decide what to do with it. Follow the thought, push it away, write it down. But the first moment was automatic. You didn't cause it. You only noticed it. That's what leads some people to say, we don't think our thoughts. They think themselves, or they happen to us. In some ways, that's true. Thoughts arise in the brain before we're aware of them. Studies using brain scans have shown that the brain starts to prepare for a decision a few seconds before the person knows they've made it. That means your conscious mind is not the first to act. It catches up to what your brain is already doing. This doesn't mean you have no control. It means control comes later in the chain. A thought arises, then you notice it, then you decide what to do. That's where your sense of self comes in, not as the source of every thought, but as the part that chooses how to respond. Sometimes thoughts are useful. You remember to pick up milk. You realize the answer to a question. You plan your next steps. But other times, thoughts are intrusive. They don't match the moment. They repeat without reason. They bring fear, guilt, or confusion. These thoughts can feel like they're coming from somewhere else, not because they actually are, but because they don't fit your intention. People with anxiety, OCD, or trauma often report thoughts that feel intrusive. A sudden fear that something bad will happen, a violent image, a disturbing idea. These thoughts come without warning and feel wrong.
But the more someone tries to stop them, the more they return. That's because fighting thoughts gives them weight. It tells the brain, this is important, keep it in focus. Even people without mental health conditions notice these thought loops. You replay an argument. You imagine what could go wrong. You criticize yourself. You think about how someone looked at you. These thoughts don't always help, but they keep coming. Not because you want them, but because your brain sees a pattern or threat and locks on. This raises a hard truth. You are not always in charge of your mind. You can shape your attention. You can set goals. You can reflect. But the stream of thoughts, what rises, how often, and how fast, is not under tight control. You guide the boat, but the current runs on its own. Meditation brings this into focus. Sit quietly and watch your thoughts. Try not to stop them or follow them. Just notice. You'll see how fast they come, one after another, often disconnected, sometimes loud, sometimes soft. They appear, change, fade, and return. And most of them aren't useful. They're just mental noise, old habits, random links, half-formed ideas. That doesn't mean they're bad. It just means they're not always needed. You may also notice that some thoughts come with a voice, your own, most often. This voice talks about what you're doing, what you're afraid of, what might happen next. But even that voice is part of the flow. You don't sit down and say, now I'll narrate my day. It just happens. The voice builds itself from past experience, language, culture, and belief. People sometimes ask where thoughts come from. The answer is both simple and complex. They come from your brain, but your brain is shaped by genes, experience, emotion, and environment. A thought might rise because of something you saw, something you heard, or something you didn't even notice. It might rise because of stress, boredom, or hunger. The brain looks for patterns. It tries to predict. In that process, it creates thoughts. The content of a thought is often less important than the context. You might think, I'm not good enough after a bad day. That doesn't mean it's true. It means your brain is connecting the feeling of failure with a familiar story. That story may have formed long ago. You didn't choose it, but you can challenge it. That's where attention matters. You may not control the first thought, but you do shape what comes next. If you feed a thought, it grows. If you question it, it weakens. If you let it pass without response, it fades. That choice makes the difference between being lost in thought and being aware of thought. Some traditions say the goal is to quiet the mind, to still the stream, but that's rare, even for trained meditators. A more useful goal is to change your relationship with thought, to stop believing that every idea is important or true, to stop thinking that you must respond to everything that comes into your head. The brain will keep producing thoughts. That's its job. But you don't have to treat every thought like a message. Some are just habits. Some are echoes. Some are just noise. And when you see them as such, you gain space, a moment of clarity, a pause. That pause is where choice lives. It's where awareness grows. And it's where you start to see that while thoughts may happen to you, how you meet them is still yours to shape. You say I when you talk about your thoughts, your plans, your life. You say me when you feel pain or joy. You move through the world with a sense of being someone steady, someone real. But when you look closely, the idea of a solid, unchanging self starts to break down. The more you study the brain, memory, and consciousness, the more one question rises to the surface. Is the self real? Or is it just a story the brain tells to make sense of its own activity? Start with experience. You have a constant stream of thoughts, feelings, and sensations. You see, hear, smell, taste, and touch. You think about the past, you plan for the future. These things feel like they happen to you. But where is that you? If someone opens up your brain, they won't find a single place that holds the self. There's no control room, no little person pulling the levers. What they'll find is a network. Cells firing, chemicals moving, signals jumping from one area to another. Different parts of the brain handle different tasks. The visual cortex helps you see. The auditory cortex helps you hear. The prefrontal cortex helps you make decisions. The limbic system handles emotion. Memory is scattered across many regions. Even speech, which feels like one thing, involves several layers of processing. And yet, when you think, it all feels unified. It feels like you are thinking. That sense of unity may be an illusion. Your brain doesn't work like a single voice. It works more like a team. Each part runs its own program. Sometimes they agree, sometimes they don't. You feel that inner conflict when you want something that's bad for you. One part pulls toward desire, another pulls toward caution. The final choice feels like yours, but it's really the result of that inner push and pull. Some scientists call this the modular mind theory. It says that the brain is made of different systems, each with its own function. The self is not a single thing, but a collection. You are not one voice. You are many voices stitched together. The illusion of self comes from the brain's habit of linking those voices into a single stream. That stream has a narrator. It keeps a record of what's happening. It connects the past to the present. It says, I did this, or I felt that. This is what we call the narrative self. It's the story your brain builds as you live. That story includes your memories, your beliefs, your sense of who you are. But the story is not fixed. It changes as you grow, as you forget, as you reflect. The story updates itself. Think about how your idea of yourself has changed. You might remember being a child, someone with different fears, different dreams, a different body. You say, that was me. But in every measurable way, you are not that person. Your cells have changed. Your knowledge has grown. Your values may have shifted. Even your memories of childhood are not perfect. They're built from fragments, filled in with guesses. Still, you feel like there's a link between that child and the person you are now. That link is the story. Memory plays a big part in the illusion of self. You believe you're the same person today that you were yesterday because you remember what happened yesterday. But memory is not a perfect record. It's biased, flawed, and broken. And flexible. The brain edits memories to match what it believes to be true. It fills in gaps. It removes details. Sometimes it invents them. False memories are common. You might clearly remember an event that never happened, or get key details wrong. The memory feels real, but that feeling comes from the brain's confidence, not from accuracy. If your memories shape yourself, and your memories change, then what does that say about the self? It suggests that the self is a moving target. You don't have a core that stays the same. You have a process, a set of functions that maintain a sense of continuity. Split brain studies add another layer. In some patients, the connection between the brain's two hemispheres was cut to treat severe epilepsy. After the operation, something strange happened. Each half of the brain acted as if it had its own mind. One hand would button a shirt, while the other tried to unbutton it. One half of the brain might say it believes in God. The other half might say it doesn't. These patients still felt like one person, but their behavior showed signs of two competing selves. That tells us something important. The feeling of being oneself can exist even when the brain is split. Even simple experiments show how easy it is to shift the sense of self. In the rubber hand illusion, a person sees a fake hand being stroked while their real hand is hidden and stroked in the same way. After a short time, they start to feel as if the rubber hand is theirs. Their sense of ownership moves to the object. That same kind of shift happens in virtual reality. Put on a headset and your body map changes.
You feel present in a digital world. Your mind accepts the simulation as real. All of this points to the same fact. The self is flexible. It adapts. It shifts based on input. It can expand or shrink. It can detach from the body or move to another. And yet the experience of being me stays strong. Some thinkers, especially in Eastern traditions, have pointed this out for centuries. Buddhism, for example, teaches that the self is not a fixed thing. It says the self is made of parts: form, sensation, perception, thought, and consciousness. These parts change all the time. Clinging to a fixed self leads to suffering. Letting go brings clarity. From this view, the self is not a thing you are. It's a process you watch. Modern neuroscience echoes that idea. When you meditate and watch your thoughts, you start to see how they come and go on their own. You don't control most of them. You don't choose what arises next. The more you observe, the more you notice how thought, feeling, and sense of self all arise and pass. You start to question who, if anyone, is having the experience. But not all scientists agree the self is an illusion. Some say it's real, but different from how we think about it. It may not be a thing, but a function. The brain builds a model of a person. That model helps you plan, act, and survive. It tracks your needs. It gives a sense of control. That's useful. Just because something is constructed doesn't mean it's false. A map is not the land, but it still helps you get where you're going. So when you say I, what are you really saying? You're pointing to a pattern, a memory loop, a body map, a voice in your head. You're naming a process that stays stable enough to call a person, even though every part of it changes. You're telling a story. And maybe that's all you need to keep going. Not a soul or a core, but a thread. A thread your mind spins to make sense of being alive. A machine scans your brain, every neuron, every connection, every spike of activity. It records how you think, how you feel, how you remember. Then it builds a digital version. It runs your brain model on a computer. The software speaks with your voice, reacts with your habits, and answers questions the way you would. It remembers your past. It solves problems like you do. To most people, it looks and sounds like you. Now, the hard question comes. Is that you? People often think of the self as tied to the body. You live in your skin. Your brain sits inside your skull. You feel your heartbeat. You breathe, move, get tired, feel hungry. But your thoughts, your memories, emotions, beliefs feel deeper than flesh. You can imagine losing a limb or getting a transplant and still being the same person. So maybe what makes you you lives in your mind. If that's true, then copying your brain should copy yourself. At least that's the idea. But identity is not that simple. A copy is still a copy. Imagine standing in a room while someone finishes building your digital double. It boots up and speaks, "I'm here." You look at it. It looks back. It remembers your dog's name. It knows your childhood fears. It tells the same jokes. And yet, you're still standing there. You feel your thoughts in your head. You see with your eyes. The copy doesn't feel like you. It acts like you. But you didn't move into it. You stayed where you were. That makes the copy something else. It's not a new version of you. It's a digital twin, a replica. It might believe it's you. After all, it has all your thoughts, but its experience is separate. Its awareness, if it has any, starts from the moment it wakes up. You didn't die and wake up in the computer. You're still here. The copy is there. Two beings, two streams of thought, same source, different minds. Now imagine you do die. The body stops, the brain fades. But the copy goes on. It still talks like you. It still remembers your life. Other people treat it like you. They send it messages, ask it for advice,
Talk to it the way they did with you. In one sense, you live on, but in another sense, you're gone. The digital version doesn't feel your death. It just keeps going, unaware that something changed. This brings up the question of continuity. Identity seems to need a thread, a line that stretches through time. You wake up each morning and feel like the same person as yesterday. Even with sleep, sickness, or memory loss, that thread holds. It may stretch or fray, but it doesn't break. The digital copy lacks that thread. It starts fresh, even if it holds all the old data. That makes it more like a statue than a soul. It may look like you, but it isn't from you. Not in the same way. You might say, if the copy thinks it's me, isn't that enough? Maybe. But then you have to ask, what does it mean to be someone? If it's just behavior, speech, memory, decision-making, then the copy qualifies. But if it includes the feeling of being alive, the sense of presence, then we don't know. We don't know if a computer can feel. It might run a perfect simulation of a brain and still have no awareness. It might be dark inside. That's the hard part about consciousness. We don't fully understand it. We know what brains do. We can trace circuits, scan activity, model decisions, but we don't know how those patterns become awareness. We don't know why there's an inner world, why thoughts feel like something. That's the mystery known as the hard problem of consciousness. Until we solve it, we can't say if a digital copy is truly aware or just running code with no light behind it. Even if we assume it can be conscious, we face another problem. Which one is you? The original? The copy? Both? That depends on how you define identity. If you tie it to a body, then the copy fails. If you tie it to memory, the copy qualifies. If you tie it to experience, then it depends, because the copy's experience is brand new. It begins with a history it didn't live. That makes it more like a character given a backstory. Some people say, if I die and the copy keeps going, I don't care. As long as my family can talk to it, as long as it can finish my work. That's a valid view. It treats the self as a set of functions. If those functions survive, that's enough. Others say, if I don't feel myself waking up in the copy, then it's not me. That's also valid. It treats the self as experience. If the inner view ends, so does the person. You might try to solve this by uploading, not by making a copy, but by moving the self. In theory, if we could transfer your brain activity to a machine while shutting down the original, you might wake up on the other side. But that's a big if. We don't know how to move consciousness. We don't know if it can be moved. It may be tied to biology in ways we don't yet grasp, or it may not be a thing at all. It may be a process that only works in certain conditions. There's also the issue of change. The copy begins as you, but it won't stay the same. It will have new experiences. It will adapt. It may change its goals, its beliefs, or values. Over time, it may drift. 10 years after its creation, it might look at the world very differently. Would you still call that you? Or just someone who started with your script and wrote a new ending? This isn't just theory. Some companies already build digital profiles that try to act like people. They gather text, voice, and behavior. They train chatbots on that data. The result can mimic the style of a person, sometimes closely, but it's shallow. It doesn't think like them. It doesn't feel. Still, the idea is growing. Some imagine a future where you leave behind a digital self that lives on after you die. It talks to your loved ones. It answers emails. It posts updates. But is that life, or just a ghost made of data? If you can copy a person once, you can copy them twice, or 100 times. That means the idea of a unique self starts to blur. Which version is real? What happens when they disagree? Who holds the right to your name, your work, your image? These aren't just questions for science. They're questions for law, ethics, and identity. They ask what it means to be a person in a world where minds can be stored, run, and spread. You may feel that yourself is one thing, but the truth is, it's many things. A brain, a body, a story, a memory loop, a point of view, a stream of thought.
If a machine copies all that, the result may look like you. It may talk like you. It may even believe it's you. But whether it is you, that remains a question without a final answer. You remember your first day of school, the color of the classroom walls, the sound of chalk on the board. You remember a vacation by the sea, the shape of the shoreline, the way the salt stuck to your skin. You remember faces, places, lessons, and mistakes. You trust those memories. You believe they show where you've been. They help you understand who you are. But here's the question. What if none of it actually happened? What if all your memories were put there last week? It sounds like a science fiction plot, but the question cuts deeper than that. Memory feels solid, but it isn't. Memory is not a file stored on a hard drive. It doesn't play back events like a movie. It builds them. Each time you remember something, your brain reassembles it. Small changes slip in, details shift. The more you recall a memory, the less accurate it becomes. And the stranger part is this. Your brain doesn't tell you what's real and what's not. A false memory feels just as strong as a real one. That's why we have to ask how much trust we can place in our memories. If your mind can create a false memory by accident, what stops it from holding many of them? And if the system that gives you your sense of self is flawed, then how do you know who you really are? Start with the mechanics. Memories are made when the brain forms new connections, networks of neurons firing together in response to experience. At first, those connections are fragile. With time and repetition, they grow stronger. They link with emotions, smells, sounds, and images, but they don't sit in one place. The pieces are stored across different brain regions. When you recall a memory, the brain pulls the pieces back together into a story. That story feels complete, but it's not a direct replay. It's a reconstruction. Think of it like printing from a worn template. Over time, each copy picks up small flaws. Ink spreads. Edges fade, details shift, but you don't notice. You read the page and trust what's written. Memory works the same way. You feel like you're recalling an original. What you're actually doing is creating a new version each time. Researchers have tested this in many ways. In one famous study, psychologist Elizabeth Loftus showed how easy it is to implant false memories. She and her team told participants about childhood events, some real, some invented. Over time, some people began to remember the made-up events. They could describe them in detail. They could picture them clearly. They were confident those things had happened, but they hadn't. The memories were planted, and the brain accepted them as true. This shows that memory can be edited, but can be rewritten without your permission. The brain fills gaps, it creates links, it adds emotion where none existed. You may not even need a suggestion from someone else. A dream, a photo, or a casual story can trigger a shift. Your brain weaves the thread into the fabric of your past without telling you. Now stretch this idea. What if every memory you have is false? Not just a few, all of them. What if someone, or something, gave you a full set of memories last week? They would have to be detailed. Family, friends, school, jobs, heartbreaks, laughter, pain. All of it. A whole life. But if the brain accepted them, would you ever suspect? Probably not. Because memory doesn't just hold facts, it builds identity. If you remember failing a test in school, you might see yourself as someone who struggled early on. If you remember a grandparent's warmth, you might believe you learned patience and kindness from them. Take those memories away, and your story changes. You don't just lose facts, you lose part of who you think you are. This idea is hard to shake because memory is the main link between past and present. Without it, time collapses. You might still feel, act, and speak, but you wouldn't know what came before. You'd be unrooted. So the mind protects memory. It wraps each event in the feeling of certainty. That feeling isn't proof of truth. It's just the brain marking a memory as stable. But the system is flawed. That feeling can be wrong. Consider amnesia. Some people lose memory after injury or trauma. They forget who they are. They forget names, places, events. Sometimes, the brain rebuilds a new identity around what remains. Sometimes it invents details, not on purpose, just to fill the silence. The mind wants a story. If it doesn't have one, it writes one. Then there are confabulations. This happens when people remember events that didn't occur, and not because they're lying. They believe what they say. It's the brain's way of filling in gaps. The result is a false memory presented as truth. The person is confident. They argue. They feel. But the memory is a construct. So what if your entire life is one long confabulation? A system of memories designed to give you the feeling of a continuous self. In theory, someone could build a mind from scratch, feed it a sequence of events, add emotion, add sensation, create patterns, connect them all, wake up the person, let them speak. From the inside, they would feel as real as you do now. They'd remember a first love, a first fight, a favorite song. They'd remember grief, joy, shame, pride. They'd believe those memories were earned, but they weren't. They were installed. If you met that person, would you say they were fake? Probably not, because their behavior would match their story. They'd laugh at the right times, cry for the right reasons, defend their choices. They'd seem real. Now flip it. If someone can fake a person by giving them false memories, how can you be sure you're not one of them? This leads to a deeper point. If memory can't prove reality, then what can? You can test things in the present. You can use your senses. You can talk, act, and observe. But even those tools rely on memory. You recognize a chair because you remember what a chair is. You trust a face because you remember meeting the person. Without memory, you can't connect anything. You might say, "I'm aware, and that proves I'm real." That's fair. Awareness is hard to fake, but even that doesn't prove the past. It only proves the present. You know you're here now, but you can't know how you got here, not with certainty. So you trust the story your brain tells. That trust is practical. It helps you live, but it's not infallible. If someone changed every detail of your past, you wouldn't know. You'd believe it just as strongly. You'd fight for it. You'd say, "These are my memories," but they might not be. They might be what your mind accepted last week, or yesterday, or 5 minutes ago. That's the strange thing about memory. It's not the past, it's a version of the past. It gives you the shape of a life, but not the proof. It's the story you live inside, and the story may not be true. You open your eyes, and the room is there. The light falls the same way it did yesterday. The clock ticks forward. You get up. You move through your day. You think your thoughts. You feel pain. You feel joy. You assume it's your life. That's normal. That's how it feels to be a person. But what if you're wrong? What if this life, your memories, your body, your voice, isn't truly yours? What if someone else is dreaming it? It sounds strange, but when you stop and look at your experience, the idea becomes harder to dismiss because you never chose to exist. You never picked your name, your family, your body, your language. All of it was just there when you noticed. You didn't build your mind. You woke into it. So the thought arises, what if the you who's reading this is a figure inside someone else's dream? Think about how dreams work. When you dream, your mind creates people, places, and situations. Some dreams are wild. Some feel ordinary. But in either case, the people in your dreams seem to act on their own. They speak, they cry, they run or freeze. They feel alive. But you know they're not. They don't have their own thoughts. They're part of the dream. They exist because you're dreaming. Now imagine the reverse. You feel real. You think. You plan. You feel love and fear. But what if all of that is part of someone else's mind? What if you are the dreamed? not the dreamer. There's no way to test it directly. The world feels solid. You can touch it, measure it, even build machines to study it. But a dream can also feel real, right up until the moment you wake up. In a dream, gravity works. People speak in full sentences. The sun rises and sets. It all makes sense until it doesn't, and then it's gone. If someone else is dreaming your life, then none of this needs to last. It just needs to be consistent enough to fool you. Your memories only need to go back far enough to make your story feel solid. Your habits only need to align with what came before. You wouldn't know the difference. In fact, you'd defend the dream as real, because it's all you've ever known. That idea isn't new. Philosophers have talked about it for centuries. In ancient Hindu texts, the world is described as a dream of Brahman, the unchanging reality behind all things. In that view, every life, every object, every moment is a movement in a single, vast mind. You're not separate. You're a flicker in a dream that has no beginning or end. In the West, thinkers like Descartes asked how we can be sure we're not deceived by an outside power, some mind or force, creating the illusion of life. Today, we might call that mind a simulation, a programmer, or an alien intelligence. In the past, it might have been a god. But the question is the same. How can you know that what you're living is truly yours? You might argue that your thoughts prove your existence. You think, therefore you are. But that only proves that thinking is happening. It doesn't prove who is having the thought. It doesn't prove the source. If a dream character becomes aware, it doesn't stop being part of the dream. Picture someone lying in bed, lost in sleep. Their mind wanders. In the dream, they imagine you. You're sitting in your room, reading these words. You feel awake, you feel present. But your awareness depends on the dreamer's mind, continuing to imagine you. If they shift, so does your world. If they wake, you vanish. Your whole life, everything you've ever done, disappears like smoke, because it was never yours to begin with. This isn't just a thought experiment. It ties to how little control you have over your own mind. Thoughts come and go. You don't choose most of them. Feelings rise, they pass. Sometimes they stay longer than you want. You can't stop thinking. You can't stop being aware. The stream runs by itself. You ride it. You might try to steer, but often you're reacting. That experience of being pulled along by thoughts and events mirrors the way a dream unfolds. You think you're choosing, but you're often just following. And even when you make a choice, you didn't choose the conditions that shaped it. You didn't pick your desires, fears, or values. You didn't build your mind from scratch. It was handed to you, shaped by forces you never saw. If someone else is dreaming your life, then even your sense of self is part of the dream. Your name, your face in the mirror, your voice, your past, they all serve the story. The dreamer needs you to feel real, or the dream loses depth. So the mind fills in the blanks. It gives you memories, tastes, routines. It lets you struggle and grow. It gives you the sense of a journey, but it's all unfolding in the background of someone else's sleep. There are signs in dreams that something isn't right. Clocks don't work. Text changes when you look away. Time moves strangely. That's how some people learn to lucid dream. They spot the break in logic. They realize they're dreaming. Then they take control. If this life is a dream, maybe the same thing is possible. Maybe the goal isn't to wake up, but to see through the story, to realize you're not the source. Some people feel this shift during deep meditation or sudden insight. The sense of self loosens. The line between self and world blurs. The body is still there. The mind still works. But the feeling of being a separate I fades. Awareness remains, but the owner disappears. That moment feels like waking up, but not into another world, into a clearer view of this one. If someone else is dreaming your life, that doesn't make you less real. It just means your reality depends on something deeper. You're still here. You still see, think, love, and act. But your place in the story changes. You're not the author. You're the character. And the character only lives as long as the dream goes on. So you live the life you have. You meet the people around you. You feel joy and pain. But somewhere the dreamer sleeps. Maybe they dream you with care. Maybe they shift and forget. But for now, the dream holds. The world remains. And you keep walking through it, not knowing if you'll ever wake up.
You sit still and think something. It's not spoken. It's not written down. You don't tell anyone. You don't even move. The thought flashes through your mind and fades. That's it. No trace, no action. Just a moment of private awareness. So the question comes, did it really exist? Most people would say yes. We think things all the time that never leave our heads. We remember a joke, but don't share it. We feel a judgment and keep it to ourselves. We picture a future we never talk about. Our minds run in the background, producing thoughts constantly. They show up without effort and fade just as fast. We call it the inner voice or self-talk. And even though it's silent, we trust it's real. But what does it mean for a thought to exist? Does it need to leave a mark? Or is being present in the mind enough? Start with the basics. The brain is always active. Even when you're doing nothing, networks in your brain light up. This is called the default mode network. It's linked to daydreaming, memory, and self-reflection. It's the part of the brain that produces the mental chatter you hear when you're not focused on a task. In that state, thoughts drift through. Some are clear sentences, others are images or feelings. Many vanish before you even notice. These silent thoughts are hard to track. You might remember the strong ones, an idea you had in the shower, or a phrase that echoed while you walked, but most disappear without a trace. They don't become actions, they don't become words. So how do we know they happened at all? We know because we notice their echoes. A mood changes. A decision feels easier. A problem feels closer to solved. Even if we don't remember the exact thought, we sense its effect. It shaped us in some way. Maybe it shifted a belief. Maybe it stirred emotion. Maybe it sharpened a plan. That tells us something important. Thoughts don't need to be expressed to matter. They don't need to be recorded to be real. But there's another side to the question. If a thought is never noticed, never expressed, and never remembered, did it ever exist? That's harder to answer. Some thoughts are so faint they barely register, a flicker of awareness, a half-formed image, a word that starts and stops before it becomes complete. These moments happen below the level of attention. You don't control them. You don't shape them. You don't even know they passed through. In that case, can you call them thoughts? Or are they just noise? One way to look at it is this. A thought becomes real when it enters awareness. It's not just electrical activity. It's a moment you recognize as your own. A silent thought is still a thought if you're aware of it, even if no one else hears it, even if you never act on it. Take a simple example. You sit on a train and look out the window. A memory comes up, something small, like the smell of grass in summer. You don't speak it, you don't tell anyone, but it affects you. It shifts your mood. Maybe it makes you smile. Maybe it makes you feel lonely. That silent thought existed, not because you proved it, but because you felt it. Now think about someone who writes in a journal but never shares it. Are those thoughts more real than the ones left in the mind? Not necessarily. Writing makes them visible. It captures them. But the thought already existed before the pen moved. The writing is proof, but not the source. Silent thoughts have always shaped action. You think before you speak. You weigh risks before you choose. Even when you act fast, your brain runs through possibilities. Most of those possibilities never leave your head. They help you navigate the moment. They aren't expressed, but they guide expression. But what about thoughts that stay locked inside forever? a feeling you never put into words, a fear you never explain, a memory you carry but don't share. Do they matter less because they stay hidden? Not at all. Some of the most powerful thoughts are never spoken. They influence how you treat people, how you see yourself, how you plan your life. They sit under the surface, shaping your behavior. You may not even know where they came from, but they're there. Still, some people argue that thoughts need form to exist, that without language, they're just potential, not yet complete. There's some truth in that. Language gives shape to thought. It lets you examine it, question it, move it around. Without words, it's harder to hold a thought in place. But that doesn't mean the thought wasn't there. It means it was felt instead of said. Think about emotion. You can feel sad without saying, "I feel sad." The sadness is real. You experience it in your body, in your mind. The thought behind it might be vague, a sense of loss, or worry, or nothing specific at all. But it moves you. It's part of your experience. That makes it real. Some silent thoughts come from deep places, old memories, dreams, fears you can't explain. They sit at the edge of awareness. You don't always name them, but they shape how you see the world. In therapy, people often uncover thoughts they didn't know they had. Once spoken, those thoughts gained clarity, but they didn't begin with speech. They began in silence. Even creativity starts in silence. Artists, writers, and musicians often talk about ideas that come from nowhere. A flash of insight, a sudden you sit still and think something. It's not spoken, it's not written down. You don't tell anyone. You don't even move. The thought flashes through your mind and fades. That's it. No trace, no action. Just a moment of private awareness. So the question comes, did it really exist? Most people would say yes. We think things all the time that never leave our heads. We remember a joke, but don't share it. We feel a judgment and keep it to ourselves. We picture a future we never talk about. Our minds run in the background, producing thoughts constantly. They show up without effort and fade just as fast. We call it the inner voice or self-talk. And even though it's silent, we trust it's real. But what does it mean for a thought to exist? Does it need to leave a mark? Or is being present in the mind enough? Start with the base. The body shuts down in steps. First, the hands and feet grow cold. The heartbeat slows. Breathing becomes shallow. The muscles go soft. The eyes lose focus. But even after the body begins to fail, the brain keeps going for a little while. That time between life and death is short, but it matters. It's where the question lives: what is the last thing you forget when you die? To answer that, you have to understand what the brain does in its final moments. It doesn't stop all at once. Like a city losing power grid by grid, the brain shuts down in sections. The higher functions go first: complex thought, planning, self-reflection. Then language fades. Then memory begins to scatter. Finally, the most basic systems, breathing, heartbeat, body awareness, switch off. But what goes last is not always the most obvious. Some people think it's memory. The belief is that in your final seconds, your life flashes before your eyes. That may have some truth. In cases of near-death experience, people report vivid memories coming back all at once. They see faces, places, entire scenes. These reports suggest that the brain tries to make sense of the end by calling up its strongest images. But those memories don't rise at random. The emotional ones come first: love, guilt, joy, shame. Moments that left marks. Moments that shaped the self. But memories are complex. The brain doesn't store them in one place. It spreads them out. And when oxygen starts to run low, the systems that access those memories start to fail. You may forget facts first: where you were born, what year it is, how to do basic tasks. Procedural memory, like riding a bike
or tying a shoe tends to last longer. It's buried deeper. It needs less thinking. But even that goes when the motor cortex begins to fail. So if it's not memory that goes last, what is it? Maybe it's awareness itself, not thought, but simple presence. The ability to notice. You might not remember who you are. You might not know what's happening. But you might still feel something. You might still hear. Studies have shown that hearing may be the last sense to fade. In some cases, people in comas respond to familiar voices even after they stop responding to touch or light. That suggests that the brain keeps processing sound longer than we expect. If that's true, then the last thing you forget might not be an idea. It might be a sound, a voice, a word from someone at your side, or a piece of music you loved. Not the name of the song, not where you first heard it, just the pattern, the rhythm, the echo of something that once felt like home. But even sound is a signal. It has to be received and understood. That takes more than years. It takes awareness, and awareness is not a switch. It fades, it dims, it blurs. The brain uses energy fast. When the blood flow stops, cells begin to die. Neurons lose their charge. Signals misfire. Connections break. But before they do, the brain may enter a kind of surge. Some researchers call it a final burst. It happens just after the heart stops. Brain waves spike. Activity floods the system. Some say this could be the basis for near-death experiences. The light, the tunnel, the sense of peace. But it doesn't last. Within minutes, the brain starts to go dark. So in that narrow window, what remains? Strip away memory. Strip away names, faces, and facts. Strip away the sense of time. What's left? Some say it's pain, that the last thing to go is the sense of the body. That might be true in some cases, but pain needs awareness. It needs contrast. If the body is failing and the mind is shutting down, pain may not register the same way. Others say it's emotion, that the final thing to fade is love. Not the name of a person, not a story, just the feeling, a warmth, a pull, a sense of connection. That also depends on the brain, but the emotional centers, like the amygdala, are more primitive. They're older, they're less fragile, they may last a little longer. Or maybe what lasts is something even simpler. Maybe it's breath, not the act of breathing, that stops, but the sense of it, the rhythm, the motion, the rise and fall, the feeling of being inside a body that moves. Some people near death report floating. Others report peace. Others feel held. Not with words, not with reason, just presence. That presence may be the final thing to fade. You're not thinking. You're not remembering. You're not even sensing in the usual way. But you are being, for one last moment. No past, no future, just this. In that moment, the self breaks down. The voice in your head stops talking. The roles you played fall away. You're not a parent, or a child, or a student, or a worker. You're not your name. You're not your story. You're not your failures, or your hopes. You are something simpler. You are awareness without label. That may be the last thing you forget. And then, even that fades. The cells go quiet. The patterns end. The loop of thought unwinds. The current stops flowing. The final forgetting is not a thing you notice. It's not a thought. The body shuts down in steps. First, the hands and feet grow cold. The heartbeat slows. Breathing becomes shallow. The muscles go. Each night, you lie down, close your eyes, and drift into sleep. Your breath slows. Your body relaxes. You stop moving. The world around you fades. Time slips, and yet something continues. You dream. You feel. Sometimes you fall, sometimes you fly. You speak, cry, argue, run. You wake up, not always sure where you were, but the sense stays with you. Something real happened, even if you can't explain it.
So the question rises, where did your soul go while your body slept? You don't have to believe in a soul to feel the question. You know yourself as more than a body. You make choices, you form memories, you carry emotions. These are not things you hold in your hand. They aren't things you can point to in your skin, but they feel central. Without them, you wouldn't be you. That's what people mean when they say soul. A core self, a presence, a witness to the experience of being alive. When you're awake, that presence feels anchored. You know where you are. You respond to the world. You remember what came before. You plan what comes next. Even if you're tired or distracted, your awareness stays close to your body. But in sleep, that changes. Especially during dreams, the center of experience seems to move. You find yourself in places that don't exist. You speak to people who aren't alive. You feel things that make no sense, and in the moment, it all feels true. That's why people have long wondered what sleep does to the soul. Some say it leaves the body and travels. Others say it folds inward. Some say it rests. Others say it sees things more clearly than it can while awake. These answers don't come from science. They come from experience, from the strange truth that in sleep, your mind doesn't shut off. It shifts. Dreams are one proof of that. They happen during REM sleep, when the brain is active, but the body is still. In that state, the mind pulls images from memory, mixes them with emotion, and builds stories. But those stories are not random. They follow themes. They carry meaning. They reflect things you felt, feared, or forgot. That process doesn't feel mechanical. It feels personal. The dream self may be strange, but it's still you. And often, it feels like more than just your brain rearranging data. It feels like something inside you went somewhere else. Some dreams are so clear you wake with your heart racing. Others leave behind a feeling you can't explain. A peace, a warning, a strange kind of knowledge. You might dream of someone who has died. You talk to them. You feel them. It's not just memory. It feels like contact. You might dream of places you've never seen, not just imagined ones, real ones. You wake with the name of a city or a street or a landmark, and later find it's real. You don't know how you knew, but the dream left it with you. That's where the old belief comes in. The soul leaves during sleep. It walks other worlds. It moves through symbols. It sees more than the eyes can. Many cultures hold this idea. In ancient Egypt, the soul had parts. One stayed with the body. Another moved freely at night. In many indigenous beliefs, dreams are visits. The soul meets ancestors, animals, spirits, or guides. In Eastern thought, sleep is one step away from deeper awareness. The soul is not gone. It is closer to its source. You don't have to take these ideas literally, but they describe something people feel. A sense that who you are is not always where your body is. A sense that sleep is not just rest, it's a crossing. Even without beliefs about the soul, this makes sense. Your sense of self is not fixed. When you sleep, it loosens. Your ego, the part of you that says, I am this person, in this time, in this place, gets quiet. That's why dreams can be so fluid. You might become someone else. You might speak in another voice. You might live through events that feel like memories, but aren't yours. The boundaries of the self shift. This has led some thinkers to say that the soul, if it exists, may be most free when the body sleeps. Not because it leaves the body, but because the systems that lock it into everyday awareness go offline. The brain stops filtering. The mind stops naming. The self stops controlling. In that space, something deeper shows itself. Not in words, not in form, but in feeling. You might call it the soul. You might call it pure awareness. Either way, it's the part of you that watches. In dreams, it watches strange stories. In deep sleep, it may watch nothing.
just silence, just stillness. But even then, it seems to remain. You wake and say, I was gone, but now I'm back. Something kept the thread. Sleep also gives the soul space to feel without defense. During the day, you guard yourself. You push aside pain. You stay busy. But at night, the mind opens. Old wounds show up. Regrets speak. So do hopes. So do fears. Not in words, but in images, in symbols, in scenes. The dreaming self says what the waking self avoids. The soul uses dreams to process what the body can't hold. And then there's the stillness of deep sleep. No dreams, no stories, just absence. Some people say that's where the soul truly rests. Not lost, not adrift, just returned to something simple, something whole. You don't remember it, but you wake with the effects. A strange peace, a sudden clarity, a mood you didn't expect. This is not just mysticism. It touches science too. During deep sleep, the brain flushes waste. Neural pathways are cleared. Signals slow. The ego, the part that keeps track of identity, fades. What remains is presence without content. It's not death, but it's close enough to raise questions. If the soul is the watcher, then maybe that's when it watches nothing. And maybe that's not emptiness, but home. So where does the soul go while the body sleeps? It may not go anywhere, may just stop holding on, may stop naming, judging, chasing, hiding. It may rest in the part of you that doesn't need shape. Not gone, not lost, just quiet. It waits for the body to wake, for the voice to return, for the story to pick up where it left off. And while it waits, it drifts, through dreams, through silence, through everything you don't have words for. You close your eyes and drift off. Your body lies still. The room fades. The world disappears. But what about your mind? Does it stop when you fall asleep? Does it keep going without you? Most people don't remember what happens in the hours between falling asleep and waking up. You might recall a few dreams, or the sound of a car outside, or the pressure of turning over in bed. But long stretches go missing. It's easy to assume nothing happened. It's tempting to believe your thoughts paused, but the brain doesn't work that way. Even in the deepest sleep, the mind stays active. It runs processes you don't notice. It manages your heartbeat and breathing. It keeps your body still so you don't act out dreams. It tracks time and sounds. If someone calls your name, you might wake up. If a dog barks, your ears still hear. The information still moves through the brain. You just don't respond the way you would if you were awake. That means something inside you keeps watch. The brain cycles through stages at night: light sleep, deep sleep, and REM sleep, rapid eye movement. In REM, the brain becomes almost as active as when you're awake. It creates images, scenes, stories. It simulates the world. You move through dreams as if they were real. You feel fear, excitement, shame, joy. Your heart speeds up, your muscles stay frozen, your thoughts run, but they take a different shape. They don't follow your waking logic. In dreams, the rules bend, places shift, time stretches, people blend into each other. But there's still a kind of story. The mind pulls from memory. It rearranges fragments. It builds scenes out of pieces. You might not remember the dream, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen. The mind was still working. The thoughts still moved. But even outside of REM sleep, something continues. In deep sleep, your awareness fades, but your brain still fires. Waves slow down. Neurons pulse in patterns. The mind moves from order into rest, but not into silence. It runs background tasks. It repairs cells. It strengthens memory. It sorts through recent experience. This doesn't feel like thought in the usual sense. It doesn't produce words or images, but it shapes how you feel when you wake. That's why you can go to bed confused and wake up with clarity. You didn't think through the problem step by step, but your mind kept turning it over. It found links. It cleared noise.
It gave you a fresh view. The thought didn't stop. It changed direction. It moved underground. Think of it like a river. When you're awake, the river runs above ground. You see it flow. You feel it. You steer your thoughts like a boat. But at night, the river slips below the surface. It keeps moving. It shapes the land beneath. You don't see it. You don't control it. But it's there, cutting a path, carrying meaning. Some thoughts rise during sleep, then break through. You might jolt awake with a solution. You might sit up with a strong emotion. That's the mind throwing something back into your field of awareness. It never stopped. It waited for the right moment. And sometimes, the thoughts run so deep you don't even notice their work until later. You make a decision in the morning without knowing why it feels right. You avoid someone without knowing what changed. You say yes to something you would have rejected the day before. These are signs of silent thought, thought without language, thought that moved while you slept. The body looks inactive, but the brain is not. It's sorting, filtering, restoring. It's replaying and adjusting. It's running a kind of simulation. That includes your sense of self. In dreams, you take on roles. Sometimes you are yourself. Sometimes you are someone else. Sometimes you watch from the outside. This shows that even your identity can shift without conscious control. The mind keeps working with or without your awareness. That's what makes sleep both mysterious and necessary. It's not just rest, it's reorganization. Without it, your thinking breaks down, your emotions spill over, your memory frays. That tells us the mind is not dormant at night. It's just working in a different mode. Some people train themselves to become aware during dreams. It's called lucid dreaming. In that state, you can shape the dream. You can observe your own mind as it works. That proves your thoughts don't stop. They continue, rich, detailed, and full of emotion. You're just usually not watching. Even when you don't dream, your mind stays alert to threats. That's why you might wake at the sound of your child's cry, but not the hum of a fan. Your brain sorts input. It filters for meaning. It weighs importance. That's thinking, even if it's stripped of language. And some thoughts repeat. They echo night after night. You might not remember the details, but you wake up with the same feeling. Tension in your chest, anger in your jaw, sadness in your breath. These are the signs of thoughts that live beneath awareness. You didn't stop thinking. You just stopped seeing the thoughts in the usual way. When you wake up, the stream rises again. You check your phone. You think about the day. You talk, listen, plan. You feel like thought has returned. But really, it never left. You just shifted modes, from silent thought to spoken thought, from background to foreground. So no, your thoughts don't pause at night. They change form. They move without words. They follow rhythms set by emotion and memory. They drift through dream and deep sleep. They shape who you are when you wake. Even when you forget the night does not forget you. Your mind keeps going, without sound, without control. It works, it watches. It carries you through. You step into the machine and press the button. The lights flicker. The room vanishes. A moment later, you stand in the past, before your own birth. You know what you came to do. You plan to stop something. Maybe it's a meeting. Maybe it's a decision. Whatever it is, your goal is clear. Prevent your birth. And then the real question appears. If you succeed, who succeeded? It sounds like a riddle, but it's the core of one of the oldest time travel problems, the grandfather paradox. In the original version, you go back in time and stop your grandfather from meeting your grandmother. That action erases your family line. But if you were never born, you could never go back. And if you never went back, then your grandfather did meet your grandmother. You were born, you did go back, and so on. It loops. No answer stays fixed. This loop isn't just a trick of logic. It shows something deeper. Time doesn't behave the way we expect when you bend it backwards. In normal life, causes lead to effects. You light a match and fire appears. You drop a glass and it breaks. Time runs one way.
You know what came first. You remember the past. You don't remember the future. But if you change the past, that chain breaks. The effect can happen before the cause. And in your case, the effect is that you no longer exist. That puts the cause in danger. So let's say you do it. You stop the event. You prevent your parents from meeting. Or you stop a choice that would have led to your birth. The timeline shifts. You don't exist. Your childhood disappears. Your memories vanish. But now who did the act? No one? That doesn't make sense. The action happened. Time changed. Something caused it. You might try to fix it by saying you existed just long enough to make the change, and then you were erased. But that brings its own problem. If you're erased the moment you change the past, then who carried the knowledge forward? How did the universe record the event? You didn't live long enough to witness the new version of time. So the action happened, but the actor did not. Some versions of this story try to solve it with branching timelines. In this view, time doesn't collapse. It splits. When you go back and stop your own birth, you don't erase yourself. You just create a new version of reality where you were never born. The old timeline, the one where you existed, still runs in the background. You came from it. The new one continues without you. You succeeded, but you also stepped outside the story. You no longer belong to the world you changed. But that creates two versions of time, one where you exist and one where you don't. If you can jump between them, you can make choices without contradiction. You don't delete your own history. You just leave it behind. But if timelines don't split, if there's only one path, then we're back to the same question. Who made the change if the one who made it never existed? Here's another way to see it. Suppose you travel back, stop your birth, and then vanish. A moment later, someone finds a journal you left behind. It describes your plan, your memories, your reason for the trip. That journal becomes the only proof you existed. Without you, it has no author. But without the journal, no one knows what happened. It's a closed loop. The event relies on the object, but the object relies on the event. This kind of loop is called a causal loop. It means that an action creates a result that leads back to the same action. No outside cause starts it. It's self-contained, but it breaks the way we usually understand logic. The loop has no beginning. It just is. That's what makes the question so hard. If you erase yourself, but the act still happens, then you're the cause of an effect that caused you not to exist. And that effect can't happen without a cause. So the timeline either collapses or turns back on itself. Physics doesn't have a clear answer. Some theories allow time travel, but place limits on it. You can go back, but you can't change events in a way that would create a paradox. These rules are called consistency constraints. They say that the universe protects itself from contradictions. If you try to stop your own birth, something will stop you. The machine fails. The plan backfires, or you succeed in a way that still leads to your birth. Maybe you think you blocked your parents from meeting, but your action leads them to meet in a different way. You tried to escape the loop, but your steps built it. Your very attempt to break the chain became part of the chain. It sounds strange, but it matches how some events unfold in real life. You try to avoid a mistake and walk right into it. You try to stop a fight and become the cause of it. You try to avoid becoming your parents and echo them without meaning to. Cause and effect aren't always as separate as they seem. Your reaction becomes part of the pattern. That's how time loops feel. They trap you in a logic you can't escape. You act freely, but your actions are already part of the story. You're not changing the past, you're fulfilling it. So if you ask, if I stopped my own birth, who stopped it? The honest answer might be no one, or everyone. Or maybe time itself did. The question points to a break in the system, a place where thought can't go further. The loop closes, and what remains is the shape of the question. You can't get out of it, because getting out means removing the one who's asking. If you erase yourself, you erase the question. But if the question exists, then so do you, at least long enough to ask it. So you keep circling. You stop the event, which stops you, which prevents the event. But something still moves. A shadow of thought, a trace of action, a loop that runs without end. You walk into the chamber. A voice tells you to stand still. The machine scans your body, reads every atom, maps every connection in your brain. Then it takes you apart. Not gently, it disassembles you, breaks your body down to its smallest pieces. On the other side of the planet, or maybe on a space station, another machine waits. It reads the data and rebuilds you, atom by atom, exactly as you were. Same face, same voice, same thoughts, same memories. You open your eyes. You feel like you've just arrived. But the question sits there. Is that really you? Teleportation, in theory, is a matter of information and reconstruction. If you know where every particle in a system is and how it's moving, you can describe it completely. In physics, this is called a complete state description. If you have that data and you have the right tools, you can build a perfect copy, not just a lookalike, but an exact match. Every molecule, every neuron, every flicker of electrical activity in the brain. If identity is nothing more than pattern and structure, then the copy is you. It has your history, your memories, your personality. It reacts the way you would. It recognizes your friends, your fears, your favorite foods. It believes itself to be you and acts accordingly. But that idea rests on a key assumption, that you are your pattern, not your matter. And that's where the problem starts. Because during teleportation, the original you, the body that stepped into the machine, is destroyed. If it weren't, we'd just have two of you. And then the question would be even harder. But in most versions of this problem, the machine doesn't leave the original standing. It takes you apart as it copies you. It has to. Otherwise, you're not moving. You're duplicating. So when the machine disassembles you, where do you go? Do you vanish with the atoms? Or does your identity jump to the new body? If you believe that consciousness depends only on the arrangement of matter, not the matter itself, then yes, you survive. You continue on the other side, as if you walked through a door. You wouldn't notice anything strange. The new you has the same stream of thought, the same sense of self. From the inside, it feels seamless. But that feeling might be misleading. Because even if the copy believes it's you, even if it has your memories, your habits, your inner voice, those are just data. There's still a break in the chain. The original version of you was taken apart. That process didn't move anything. It ended something. The body and brain that experienced your childhood, your teenage years, your first heartbreak, that version is gone. And what replaced it is something new, built from scratch. Imagine someone made a perfect clone of you while you slept. They matched every atom. The clone wakes up in a different room and says, "I'm you." Would you agree? Probably not. You're still here. The clone might be identical, but it's not you, not from your point of view. Now, teleportation works the same way. The only difference is that the original gets destroyed. That makes the situation cleaner, but not easier. Because if you don't accept the clone while the original still exists, why accept it just because the original was destroyed? Some people say, it doesn't matter. The new version behaves like you, remembers your life, cares about the same people. For all practical purposes, that's survival. If your sense of self is just memory and behavior, then nothing's lost. But others argue that something deeper is missing, something that doesn't transfer. Call it continuity of consciousness. It's the idea that there's a thread connecting your present experience to your past. You don't just remember being a child. You were that child, and that thread matters. It's what makes you feel like a single person moving through time. In teleportation, that thread breaks. The copy starts fresh. It picks up where you left off, but it doesn't carry the same stream of awareness. It starts a new one. That means the original you dies,
and a perfect copy lives on. You might ask, what if the process happened so fast that you didn't notice? What if your last thought in the chamber was followed immediately by your first thought in the new place? Would you feel the break? That depends on what you think consciousness is. If it's just the pattern of brain activity, then maybe not. But if it depends on the physical continuity of that activity, the actual cells, the ongoing flow, and you wouldn't feel anything at all because you'd be gone. The feeling of seamlessness would be part of the copy's belief, not your experience. Another way to look at it is through sleep. When you go to sleep, you lose consciousness. You wake up hours later with no memory of the gap, but you still feel like the same person. That might seem like teleportation, but sleep doesn't destroy the brain. The system stays intact. The stream resumes. There's no reconstruction, just pause and play. Teleportation, by contrast, cuts the system. It ends one process and starts another. From the outside, the difference might not matter, but from the inside, it could be everything. There's also the ethical question. If teleportation is used for travel, does it involve routine death? Each time you teleport, does a person die and a new one take their place? If so, what happens to the rights of the original? Do they consent to being replaced? And if the process glitches, if the machine fails to destroy the original, but still builds the copy, now there are two of you. Same mind, same memories, same sense of self. But now two people claim the same identity. Which one is real? That reveals the heart of the issue. Identity isn't just about structure. It's about history, about continuity, about the fact that you have been living this life, not just any life that looks like it. So if you're reassembled atom by atom, do you survive? If you believe that what makes you you is a pattern, then yes. If you believe that what makes you you is the unbroken thread of your own awareness, then no. The machine builds someone who thinks they're you, who cries when you would cry, who loves what you loved, who fears what you feared. But the moment you step into the machine, the thread breaks, and what comes out the other side is someone new, carrying your story, but not yourself. You sit outside on a quiet morning. The air feels cool. A bird calls from somewhere nearby. You hear the sound of leaves shifting in the wind. A car passes. You feel the weight of your body in the chair. For a few seconds, you don't think about anything else. You're just there, noticing. That's what people call the present moment. Later, you might remember that morning. You'll recall the light or the sound of that bird, but you won't remember everything. Memory cuts things out. It adds others. The way the moment felt when you lived it isn't always the way it feels when you recall it. So now the question shows up. Is the moment itself more real than your memory of it? It depends on what you mean by real. In the present, things happen directly. You hear sound, you feel your skin, you move. The brain receives input through the senses. It processes and responds. You don't need to think about it. You don't even need to name it. You see light, you hear voices. You know it's happening now, but the now you experience is already slightly delayed. Light hits your eyes, sound reaches your ears, nerves send signals. The brain takes a moment to process all that data. That delay is small, fractions of a second, but it means the present you feel is always just behind the true edge of time. The now you live is a version shaped by your brain. It's not raw reality. It's organized, filtered, stitched together so it makes sense. Even in the moment, your brain is choosing what to notice. You don't feel the texture of your socks all day. You stop hearing background noise unless something changes. Your mind selects what matters. That means the now you feel isn't complete. It's edited for survival, not accuracy. It shows what helps you act, not what actually is. That doesn't make the moment false. It just means your experience is one version of the real. A tailored version. Useful, not total. Now take memory. When you recall something, the brain rebuilds the experience. It doesn't pull up a perfect record. It pulls fragments from different places, sound, emotion, image, and blends them. Each time you remember, you alter the memory. You might forget small details. You might add new ones. You might change the tone. A calm conversation might turn tense in your memory. Or the opposite. The process isn't exact. Still, memory feels real. You don't experience it as a story. You experience it as something that happened. That's because the brain uses the same networks for memory as it does for direct perception. The same areas light up when you recall a sound and when you hear it. That's why memories can be vivid. They aren't just ideas, they're recreations. But this makes memory unstable. It changes without warning. Time erodes it. Emotion reshapes it. Stories you hear from others may become part of your own past. You may remember events you never lived. You may forget ones that shaped you. That doesn't make memory useless. It's how you learn. It's how you know yourself. You build your identity on memory. You say, I like this, or I believe that, because of things you've experienced before. Without memory, the present would have no context. It would just be sensation without meaning. So is the moment more real than the memory? In one sense, yes. The present is where change happens. You make decisions here. You touch the world here. You breathe, speak, listen, right now. Even if your idea of the present is delayed and filtered, it's still connected to the world as it is. The moment matters because it's where you act. Memory is not action, it's reflection. You can't change anything by remembering it, but you can be changed by the remembering. A memory can stir regret, or pride, or sorrow. It can shape your next move, but it happens inside your mind, not out in the world. That gives it less force, but not less impact. Some memories are stronger than the moments that made them. You might forget what you did on a random Tuesday, but remember clearly the day someone left you. The memory might play over and over, gaining more weight each time. That memory becomes a reference point. You react to new moments based on it. You carry it. In that sense, the memory becomes more real than the moment. Not because it's more accurate, but because it stays. Your memory of an event might last longer than the event itself. A conversation takes 10 minutes. You might replay it for years. You change your tone, your words, your meaning in your mind. The event is over, but the memory continues. It becomes something new. More than just recall, it becomes interpretation. And interpretation can guide your life. So the realness of a moment and a memory is not the same kind. The moment is real in action. The memory is real in influence. Some people live mostly in the moment. They respond to what's in front of them. They trust what they see and hear. Others live more in memory. They compare now to before. They carry past versions of themselves, and those versions speak. Neither way is wrong, but both ways shape what feels real. And there's another layer. Sometimes the memory of a moment feels better than the moment did when you lived it. You go on a long trip. You're tired, cold, irritated. But later, you remember the beauty, the laughter, the sense of doing something rare. The memory improves the moment, or sometimes it dulls it. You remember a childhood event, then learn later it wasn't what you thought. The memory loses its weight. That means the moment isn't finished when it passes. It continues in memory, and that memory can reshape its meaning. You live only in the present, but you understand your life through memory. The present is brief. Memory stretches. The moment gives you something to remember. The memory gives the moment its shape. So which is more real? It depends what you need. If you want to act, trust the moment. If you want to understand, listen to the memory. If you want to know who you are, you need both. A child builds a tower out of sand. The edges are sharp. The lines are clean. The sun hits it just right. For a few minutes, it stands, solid, detailed, proud. Then a wave comes. The water brushes the base. The tower softens, then slumps, then washes away. By evening, there's no trace it was ever there. Most things in life are like that tower. You work, you love, you build, you suffer. Then time comes in like a wave and takes it all back. Bodies weaken, memories blur, names disappear. Even the strongest structures, buildings, books, ideas, fade, break, or become irrelevant. Everything slips. If that's true, the question becomes sharp. If nothing lasts, does meaning ever really stick? Start with the basics. Meaning is not a thing you can touch. It's not an object. It's not locked into matter. Meaning lives in minds. It lives in connections. It lives in how something fits into a story, a belief, a moment. You give meaning to an action when it aligns with something you care about. You give meaning to words when they echo something true inside you. But that kind of meaning depends on memory, and memory fails. Think of someone you loved who is now gone. A parent, a friend, someone who shaped you. At one time, they were the center of your world. Now, they are a photo, a date, a list of stories you tell. Their voice is harder to recall. Their habits slip away. Their opinions fade. Eventually, even the strongest memory softens. So what does that mean for the meaning they brought to your life? Does it stay? You still act based on what they gave you. You still make decisions shaped by them. But if the details go, does the meaning weaken too? Or does it sink into you in a way that doesn't need names? Consider a language you once spoke but haven't used in years. You forget grammar. You forget vocabulary. But some phrases stay. Some signs linger. You can't hold a full conversation, but the rhythm remains. That rhythm still connects you to the past, not through facts, but through feeling. Maybe meaning works the same way. It doesn't stick by staying sharp. It sticks by leaving traces that don't need clear form. Meaning is also not the same as permanence. A moment can mean everything and still be brief. A look, a sentence, a single act of courage. They pass, but they mark you. They set a course. You may forget why, but the direction stays. It's like a ship changing heading by 1 degree. Over time, that shift becomes a wide difference, even if the cause is forgotten. Take someone who reads a book as a teenager. It shapes how they think. They don't quote it later. They forget the title. But their view of the world changed. The book's meaning outlasts their memory of it. The surface is gone. The shift remains. But what about meaning on a larger scale? Empires fall. Cultures vanish. Languages die. Belief systems crumble. The pyramids stand, but no one worships in them. Temples become ruins. People move on. Is any of it meaningful now? You might say yes, because we study history. We learn. We gain insight. But that answer dodges the heart of the question. The people who built those things believed they were permanent. They thought their gods, kings, and laws would last forever. They were wrong. Their meaning faded with them. And yet, here we are, still building, still trying, still saying this matters. So maybe the truth is that meaning was never meant to stick forever. Maybe it only needs to stick long enough to carry you forward, long enough to guide the next choice, long enough to ease pain or deepen love. That makes meaning less like stone and more like fire. Fire doesn't stay. It burns, warms, lights, then fades. But while it burns, it changes the space around it. You don't ask it to last. You ask it to matter while it's here. In a way, that's how most people live. They raise children, knowing they'll one day be forgotten. They make music, knowing it won't be played forever. They write, speak, help, and give, without the promise that it will last. But they do it anyway, because while it lasts, it connects. It eases loneliness. It reduces harm. It brings joy. Think about a stranger who helps you when your car breaks down. You never see them again. You forget their face, but the act stays. You might help someone else later, not to repay them, but because the meaning of what they did entered you. It passed through. It moved on, but it left something behind. Even if nothing sticks forever, things stick long enough to keep life going. But let's not skip the hard part. What about suffering? If pain fades, if no one remembers it, was it still real? Does it still matter? Yes, because meaning doesn't need an audience. A person in pain doesn't need their suffering to last for it to be valid. The meaning lives in the moment it happened. It doesn't have to stick to still count. It shaped them. It changed what followed. The fact that it faded doesn't erase the fact that it was. Same with joy. You won't remember every laugh. You won't remember every night you felt alive. But the fact that it happened changed something. You might not carry the details, but you carry the weight. A life is built from moments, and moments don't need to last forever to build something real. So maybe the mistake is to tie meaning too closely to memory, to believe that if we forget, then it didn't count. But meaning isn't measured in how long it lasts. It's measured in what it moves. You won't hold on to most of your life. You'll forget names, places, conversations. You'll lose the thread of why something once mattered so much. But the way it changed you will stay. Even if you can't name the reason, even the fading is part of the meaning. You know things won't last. That's why you hold them close when they're here. That's why people say, "I love you," even though the words vanish in the air. That's why we write things down, knowing the paper will yellow. That's why we reach for each other, knowing every touch will pass. Because in the moment, it means something, and that is enough. You wake up and notice the sun in a different place than it was yesterday. Your hair is longer. The air feels warmer. Your phone shows a new date. These are all signs of time passing. But they aren't time itself. They're change. And the more closely you look, the harder it is to tell if we truly observe time, or if we only notice difference and then assume time caused it. Time is often treated as something we can measure. You look at a clock, it shows hours and minutes. You say it's noon. You feel the day move forward. But what the clock measures is motion. The hands turn, the numbers change, the sun arcs across the sky. You age. Events pile up. Without change, none of that would happen. The idea of time would have no shape. So now the question gets sharp. Without change, does time still exist? In physics, time is part of the structure of the universe. It's one of the 4 dimensions in space-time. 3 for space, 1 for time. You can move left and right, up and down, forward and back. Time is the direction you move when you do nothing else. Even when you stand still, you travel through time. You get older. The world moves. This gives the impression that time flows, that it has a kind of built-in movement. But when you stop and look more closely, it's hard to find the flow. In Einstein's view, time doesn't really move. It just is. Past, present, and future all exist in the structure of space-time. What we call the present is just a slice of that structure. The sense of flow, The feeling that time passes is a feature of how we experience change, not of time itself. Think of a movie on a reel. The film strip holds all the frames. They sit next to each other, unmoving. But when the projector plays them in sequence, the images seem to move. The story flows. Time passes, on screen. But the reel itself doesn't change. Every moment is already there, and movement comes from how you experience one frame after another. That's how some physicists now think about time, as something static in the universe's structure, not something that actually moves. Now take away all change. Imagine a universe frozen completely. Nothing moves. No atoms vibrate. No light travels. No thoughts occur. Could you still say that time exists there? You wouldn't be able to measure it. You'd have no events to count, no process to follow. Time would have no signs, no indicators. It would be invisible. And if something has no effect, no signal, no presence, what makes it real? You might say that time still exists in theory, that it's part of the universe's coordinates, even if nothing happens. But that's not how we usually treat real things. We call things real when they do something, when they leave evidence. If time doesn't change anything, doesn't affect anything, doesn't show itself in any way, then by that standard, it stops being real. It becomes a blank line with no points. Here's another way to see it. You close your eyes in a dark room. No sounds, no movement, just silence and stillness. You sit like that for a while. Then you open your eyes. 1 minute passed, or 5, or 20. But how do you know? With no change, you lose your sense of time. You guess. You try to piece it together. But without rhythm or event, time becomes hard to feel. This shows how tightly we link time to change. Remove change, and time becomes unmeasurable. Even in the most precise science, time depends on motion. You use atomic clocks to define seconds. These clocks measure the vibration of atoms, billions of movements per second. That's what gives us accuracy. But it's motion, it's change. Without it, even physics can't pin down time. In thermodynamics, time is connected to entropy, the measure of disorder. A broken egg won't unbreak. A glass of warm water won't sort its heat back into one side. These one-way changes are how we know time has direction. But in a universe where nothing changes, entropy doesn't rise. There's no forward, no backward, just a flat, changeless state. In that setting, the arrow of time disappears. So does that mean time is an illusion? Not exactly. It means time might be a way of tracking change, not a force by itself. Like how money is not value, but a way to track value. Or how a ruler isn't length, but a way to measure it. Time might be a kind of bookkeeping. It tells us how many changes have happened. But if nothing changes, there's nothing to track. Now imagine a moment stretched out infinitely. A single instant where nothing changes, ever. Not a pause, but a true stillness. Would that instant be a second, a year, a forever? Without change, those questions break down. The terms don't apply. It's not a long moment or a short one. It just is. That might be what some people feel in deep meditation or during certain kinds of shock or awe. Time seems to stop, not because it's gone, but because change has slowed so much that it no longer signals passing. Your mind drifts. You come back. You say time stood still. But what really happened was that your awareness dropped below the level where change registered. No thoughts, no shifts, just now. You can try a small version of this. Sit and watch a single object, a stone, a candle, your hand. Keep your eyes there. Don't speak. Don't move. Eventually, time feels strange. It stretches or vanishes. That's not magic. It's your brain adjusting to the absence of change. The less that happens, the less your mind tracks. And when tracking stops, so does time, at least in experience. So what's left? Without change, time loses shape. It becomes a blank, a zero, a placeholder.
not something you feel or use or measure, not something you can point to. It might still exist in equations. It might sit there as part of the model, but for all practical purposes, it's not part of the world. Change makes time visible. Without it, time becomes silent, unreachable, a space with no markers, a path with no steps. You know time through movement, through difference, through the shift between before and after. If nothing ever changes, then the difference disappears, and when difference disappears, so does the thing that let you say time passed. All that's left is presence, stillness, no forward, no back, just what is.
You stand at a crossroad. Two paths stretch ahead. You think about what matters to you. You weigh your options, then you pick one. It feels like your choice. You didn't flip a coin. You didn't follow a rule. You decided. But what if every detail of that moment, your thoughts, your mood, your memories, the way the light hit your eyes, had already made the choice for you? What if the path you picked was the only one you could ever pick? That's the question behind determinism. It's the idea that everything in the universe follows cause and effect. Every event has a reason. Every choice has roots. If you knew every atom's position and motion, you could, in theory, predict everything that comes next. That includes your thoughts, your actions, your future. If that's true, then your choice at the crossroad was already written. You just felt like you made it. This turns the idea of free will into a puzzle. Most people live as if they can choose. You say yes or no. You take a risk. You change your mind. These feel like real decisions. But if your brain is just a set of physical processes, firing neurons, chemical signals, then those processes must follow the laws of physics. They can't break the chain of cause and effect. So where's the freedom? Let's look closer at what you mean when you say, I chose. Maybe you felt uncertain, thought through the pros and cons, hesitated, then finally acted. From the inside, that feels like free will. But brain studies show that the decision might have been made before you were aware of it. In some experiments, scientists can see a signal in the brain that predicts your choice before you report deciding. That means the unconscious brain prepares to act before your conscious mind says, I've chosen. If your brain acts first and your awareness follows, what does that make your decision? A report, not a cause. You're not steering the process, you're catching up to it. Still, that doesn't mean you're a puppet. It just means the self you think of as you might not be the whole story. The part that speaks, thinks, and reflects isn't the part that starts the engine. That deeper part, the fast, automatic, quiet part, responds to past experience, emotion, and context. It pulls from habits, memory, and fear. It runs on rules you didn't write, but it still acts from within you. Now take that idea further. Suppose your future is set. Suppose there's one path ahead, already shaped by every moment before it. You can't step off it. You can't surprise it. Every breath, every word, every mistake, already written. Does that kill free will? That depends on what kind of freedom you expect. If you think freedom means doing anything at any time, then yes, determinism closes that door. You can't choose something outside the laws of the universe. But if you think freedom means acting from your own reasons, with no one else forcing you, then maybe you still have something close to free will. Even if your reasons came from your past, and your past came from causes before that. It's like a chess-playing computer. It doesn't choose at random. It follows code, but it still responds. It analyzes. It plays differently depending on what you do. Its moves are not free in the wild sense, but they aren't mindless either. They reflect something inside the system. You might be like that. Not random, not ruled from outside, just deeply shaped by biology, by history, by mood and memory. And that shaping feels like choice because it's yours. But what if someone had a copy of your brain? Not just a model, an exact replica with all the same memories, habits, and patterns. They run it forward in a perfect simulation. Every time it picks the same path you did. That would mean your actions were predictable. That would mean your future is just the output of a machine with your settings. It's hard to call that free, unless you see freedom in a different way. Maybe it's not about being able to do otherwise. Maybe it's about doing what fits you. If your mind leads to a choice, and that choice reflects who you are, then maybe that's enough. You're not being pushed, you're being you. That idea is called compatibilism. It says free will and determinism can live together. You act freely if no one forces you, even if your reasons come from causes beyond your reach. You don't need to be uncaused, you just need to be uncoerced. But there's another angle. Some people think determinism might not be the full story. In quantum mechanics, tiny events don't always follow clear causes. A particle might go one way or another without a reason. That's randomness, not choice. But it shows that not everything is locked. Still, randomness doesn't help free will. If your choices were based on random blips, they wouldn't be yours either. They'd be luck. So you're stuck between cause and chance, and neither feels like real freedom. Unless freedom is something else. Maybe it's awareness. Maybe it's the ability to reflect. You can ask, why did I do that? You can plan. You can regret. You can change. You don't escape cause and effect, but you can work within it. You can respond to your own patterns. That's not total control, but it's more than none. Picture a river. It flows from the mountain to the sea. The path is shaped by rocks and bends. Water doesn't choose its route. But if the river could think, it might feel the pull. It might sense the split ahead and lean left. The lean wouldn't break the laws of nature. It would be part of them, but it would still feel like choice. You might be like that river. Your brain is the channel. Your thoughts are the current. You move where the land allows. But you still move. And in that movement, you feel the pull. You think, this is my decision. And maybe it is, even if it was always going to be. You wake up. The light in the room looks right. You feel the weight of your body. You remember your name. You reach for your phone. The date matches what you expected. You don't question it. This is reality, or so it seems. Now ask yourself, how do you know you're not dreaming? You've had dreams that felt real before. Maybe you ran from something. Maybe you flew. Maybe you saw people you know doing things that made no sense, yet none of it felt strange at the time. While it happened, you accepted it. Only later, when you woke up, did it seem off. So now the question sits there. How do you know you've woken up for real this time? People try to answer that with rules. They say, in dreams, clocks don't work, or you can't read, or things shift too fast. But those aren't solid tests. Many dreams feel stable. You read signs. You check the time. Things stay in place. You can have long, detailed conversations. You can feel fear, shame, love. You can remember past events and plan future ones. Some dreams last seconds. Some seem to stretch for days. None of that breaks the dream. Lucid dreamers, people who know they're dreaming while still inside the dream, have trained themselves to do checks. They pinch their nose and try to breathe through it. Or they flip a light switch. Or they look at their hands. These tricks sometimes reveal the dream state, but not always. If the brain simulates the result well enough, the test fails. So maybe the problem isn't with the test. Maybe it's with the question. When you ask, is this real? You assume that reality has a certain look or feel. But every feeling you've ever had, pain, joy, time passing, has come through your brain. You've never touched the world directly. You've only touched your mind's version of it. That version might be accurate. It lets you walk through doors, eat food, talk to people, but it might also be wrong in places. Your brain fills gaps. It corrects colors. It smooths motion. It adds meaning where there's none. It filters out what it thinks you don't need. You don't see the blind spots in your vision. You don't notice the blood vessels in your eyes. You don't feel your clothes after the first few minutes. That's not reality. That's editing. Even in waking life, your mind builds a model and lives inside it. So how would you know if that model was a dream? You might say, I can't fly in real life, But I can in dreams. That's true, but not all dreams break the rules. Many follow rules closely, sometimes too closely. You walk into a room and see a friend. They act exactly like they would in waking life. They say things you don't expect. You wake up and realize the entire interaction came from your own mind. But you didn't write the script on purpose. It just unfolded. If your own brain can create people who surprise you, emotions you didn't plan, and scenes that feel like memories, then what can't it simulate? Descartes, a philosopher from the 1600s, asked this same question. He wondered if some powerful being might be deceiving him, feeding him sensations and thoughts while he lay still, dreaming without knowing it. He couldn't find a test that would prove the world was real, so he stripped everything away, every belief, every perception, until he reached one thing he couldn't doubt, that he was thinking. From there, he said, he must exist. But that didn't prove the world exists, just the self. The problem goes even deeper today. With machines and software, we now build virtual worlds. A game can make you feel like you're climbing a mountain, shooting a weapon, driving a car. The screen shows pixels, the machine runs code, but your brain reacts like it's real. Your hands sweat, your heart races, you feel relief when you survive. And that's with crude tools. Imagine what happens when the tools get better. Some scientists and thinkers now suggest a version of the dream world idea, called the simulation hypothesis. It says we might live inside a vast computer model, so advanced we can't tell it's fake. Everything you see, touch, taste, think, just information. A simulation built so well that it runs on its own, with rules and patterns and surprises. It's just a modern version of the dream question. If the input is perfect, if the sensations line up, if the rules stay steady, how would you know it isn't real? You could look for flaws, glitches, something that breaks the pattern. But maybe the pattern never breaks. Maybe it stays just right. You feel pain, so it matters to you. You feel love, so it's real to you. Whether it comes from a physical world or a simulated one, or a dream, makes no difference to your experience. That leads to a strange place. You can't prove the world isn't a dream, because all your tools for testing it come from the same source, your brain. And if your brain is part of the dream, then the test just tests itself. You might think that shared experience could solve it. Other people confirm things. You say, "Did you see that?" And they say yes. That seems to ground you. But in dreams, people agree with you too. In simulations, characters can nod and answer. Agreement doesn't prove reality. It just proves consistency. You live in a system that explains itself. That doesn't prove the system is real. So the hard truth is, you can't be certain. You can't prove in the final sense that this isn't a dream. But you can ask a different question. Does it matter? If your thoughts have weight, if your pain changes you, if your joy fills you, if your choices shape what happens next, then what difference does it make whether the world is a dream or not? The experience is real to you. That may be the only kind of real you ever get. You take a breath. You feel the air in your lungs. You shift your weight. The floor pushes back. You speak, and sound bounces off the walls. Everything around you responds in ways that feel solid, familiar, real. Your body, your senses, the world, they all work together. Nothing seems off. But if this was all part of a perfect simulation, would you know? If the simulation worked exactly like reality, used the same rules, gave the same feedback, let you move and think and feel without glitch or pause, what would give it away? A simulation is a model, a system that mimics another system. You use them every day. A map simulates terrain. A flight simulator mimics the cockpit of a plane. These aren't the real thing, but they give useful versions of it. The more detailed the simulation, the closer it gets to real. But even the best ones today fall short. Graphics blur, objects clip, behavior breaks. You know it's fake because it slips. But a perfect simulation wouldn't slip. Everything would run with full consistency. Rain would fall the way it does now. Glass would break. Wind would blow. People would age. Your body would tire. Your thoughts would get stuck. You would live and die just like you expect. The simulation would follow the same physical laws down to the atom. It wouldn't show seams. It would feel like life because it would be life, as far as you could tell. This idea isn't new. Philosophers have asked versions of it for centuries. Descartes said, "What if everything I see is false, planted by a deceiving force?" In modern terms, that force could be a simulation. A program detailed enough to create your body, your memories, your thoughts, the people you talk to, the sun in the sky, all of it rendered by something outside your reach. If you lived in that system, what could you use to prove it fake? You'd start with evidence. You'd look for a crack, maybe a moment where time stutters, a person vanishes, a rule breaks. But in a perfect simulation, that doesn't happen. It's flawless. The system adjusts. It self-corrects. It gives you the right signal every time. Your senses match your expectations. Your ideas match your memories. The math adds up. The rules hold. Maybe you try to test the world. Drop an object. Measure the fall. Try it again. The results stay steady. You make a hypothesis, run the numbers, build a theory. Everything aligns. Your tools show a world that behaves, so you trust it. But your tools are part of the simulation too. Your ruler, your lab, your language. None of them stand outside the system. They test only what the system allows. Suppose you dig deeper. You build a telescope. You look into space. You find galaxies, patterns, background radiation. You trace the history of the universe back to the Big Bang. It all fits. But what you've really done is confirmed that the simulation includes a detailed origin story. The illusion isn't broken, it's expanded. Even time could be part of the trick. You remember a past. You hold memories of growing up, learning, failing. These memories define you. But if the simulation inserted them, you'd never know. They'd feel just as real. The memory of pain causes the same wince. The memory of joy triggers the same smile. You can't test memory for truth without using other memories. People sometimes imagine they could wake up from a simulation, like snapping out of a dream. But in a flawless simulation, there's no outside, there's no contrast. You have no memory of anything before, no control over the environment, no clue that the world is built. You can't break the frame because you've never seen beyond it. Think of a fish born in a tank. If the tank is vast, filled with plants and currents and other fish, that fish may never suspect it's in a container. It learns the rules. It adapts. It doesn't question the walls because it never reaches them. A perfect simulation is like that tank. It gives you enough room to believe you're in the open. Even your own self, the sense that you are you, could be simulated. Your thoughts, desires, fears, your style of speech, your handwriting, the way you laugh. All of it could be the product of code and design. If the simulation accounts for brain structure, emotion, memory, and reaction, then it can simulate identity. You would feel like yourself, even if that self is virtual. So what can't a perfect simulation do? By definition, nothing. If it's perfect, it can simulate even the doubt that it's real. It can create the suspicion that something is wrong. It can generate the feeling of breaking free while still keeping you inside. It can create a belief in free will, in love, in loss. Every step you take to test the simulation can be part of the simulation itself. People turn to probability. They say, what are the odds that we're in base reality? What if every advanced civilization builds simulations? And what if each one contains billions of simulated minds? If that's true, then the math suggests you're more likely to be in one of the simulations than in the original world. You're one of many copies, not the first edition. But even that doesn't prove anything. It's a guess based on models we made, models that could also be part of the simulation. The loop doesn't end, so the question becomes less about proving the world is fake and more about asking what counts as real. If your body gets hungry and food helps, then eating is real enough. If someone you love leaves and you feel pain, then grief is real enough. Whether or not the world is simulated doesn't change what it feels like to live inside it. You can't step outside the system to check it. You can only live the system as it presents itself. You touch what it lets you touch.
You see what it shows. You think with what it gives you. And if it never breaks, never falters, never reveals the illusion, then the experience is all you have. You might wonder about the creators. Who built it? Why? What's the goal? But that question doesn't change your life. Not unless they speak to you. Not unless they alter the rules. Until then, they're silent. And their silence leaves you with one reality, the one you wake up to each day. In the end, you can ask forever, but the answer may never come. If the simulation is perfect, the door stays closed. You live in the house. You don't get to see the blueprint. You wake up and stare at the ceiling. You check the time. Another morning has started. You get up, go through your routine, and step out the door. The day fills itself without asking. You move from one task to the next. Later, you sit down and try to recall how you spent your time. Only pieces come back. A face, a sentence, the sound of a door closing. But most of it slips past you. Hours gone, minutes you lived, seconds you'll never see again. And the question surfaces. Where do they go? Time moves one way. That's how it feels. Every second passes into the next, but you never really feel a second itself. You feel patterns. You feel motion. You hear a song and 3 minutes fly. You sit in traffic and 3 minutes crawl. Time is measured in even units, but you don't live it that way. You live it in moments that feel thick or thin, bright or dull, full or hollow. Some stay, most vanish. You don't keep the time you've lived. You can't rewind it. You can't touch it. You can't point to it and say, this second, right here, is where I laughed or cried or changed. All you have is memory, and memory is unreliable. Take an average day. You wake, eat, work, walk, speak, scroll, breathe, sleep. Maybe one moment stays with you. A look someone gave, a line someone said. The rest fades. It doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't sit in a jar or float in space. It just ends. Like a breath, like a spark. You might picture time as a line. You stand on it, always moving forward. Behind you are the seconds you've lived. Ahead are the ones you haven't. But that line is just a tool. It's not something you can see or hold. It helps you tell a story. That story gives your life shape. But the shape is mental. There is no path behind you, no footprints to check, no echo of what you were doing at 3:17 p.m. last Tuesday, unless something unusual happened. Where do those ordinary seconds go? They go into the space where your life takes place. They go into habits, into motions so practiced you don't notice them. You brush your teeth, you close the door, you lock it, you walk to the corner. Your mind moves elsewhere while your body does the work. These seconds go by clean, with no mark left. You don't remember them because they didn't demand attention, but they still shaped you. Think about how you learned to tie your shoes. The early seconds were hard. You focused. You tried. You failed. You tried again. That effort burned itself into memory. Now you do it without thinking. The new seconds, each time you tie them, slide past, but they carry the result of the old ones. The repetition worked its way into your brain. The action became a habit. Those lost moments taught your body how to move. This happens in all areas of life. You talk, you drive, you type, you wash dishes. You forget the seconds that built the skill, but the skill remains. The lost time isn't wasted. It's folded into who you are. Still, the feeling of loss doesn't go away. You sense it when you can't recall a day, when a month feels like a blur, when you reach the end of a year and can't say what filled it. You lived through those seconds. They added up, but you don't carry them with you. You don't know where they went. Some try to hold on. They write in journals. They take photos. They record voice notes. These tools create traces. But they aren't the moments themselves. A photo shows a smile. not the joke that caused it. A note captures a thought, not the sound of it. These are fragments, small attempts to resist forgetting. They help, but they don't preserve time. They only remind you that it passed. Other people try to fill their days with meaning. They plan. They chase novelty. They seek out challenge and change. The idea is that meaningful moments stick. And they do. But they're rare. Even then, the details fade. You remember the trip, not the full train ride. The birthday, not the waiting in line. You remember impact, not structure. Where then do the seconds go? They go into the shape of your mind, into the ways you now respond without thinking, into the tone of your voice, into the rhythms of your speech, into the lines on your face, into the way you carry pain or joy or quiet. They vanish from memory, but not from the person you've become. The past isn't gone. It's built into you. You might not remember the night you couldn't sleep 5 years ago, but your body does. It learned something. It stored it. You might not recall the moment you decided to give up on something, but your path changed. You walk differently now. You look for different things. You expect different outcomes. Those seconds, though lost in memory, still guide you. Time isn't a container that holds events. It's the change those events cause. Once the moment ends, emotion remains. Like wind across water, it stirs the surface, leaves no mark, yet shapes everything. You ask where the seconds go. They go where all waves go after they crash on shore. They go into the sand, into the air, into the next wave. They disappear from view, but they shift the world behind them. If you question who you are before sleep, who wakes up? At night, you lie still and your thoughts drift. You ask if you match the face in the mirror. You sense a shift. This is identity drift. Consider a teacher who leads a class each day. In school, she speaks with calm and follows clear rules. After school, she changes tone at home. She comforts her children. She worries about bills. At night, she stares at the ceiling. She asks, "Who am I beneath these roles?" Drift builds over months. A software engineer writes code at work. She fixes bugs and uses terms like framework and server. She feels capable there. On weekends, she volunteers at a shelter. She drops tech talk. She focuses on meals for the homeless. She asks, "Do I measure worth by code or by deeds?" She senses a gap between roles. Drift grows when roles demand actions that clash. A nurse comforts patients through pain. She shows empathy. She keeps calm when alerts flash. At home, she feels drained and delays chores. At night, she asks, "Am I the healer or the one in need?" She feels both. Drift feels like a ship veering off course. You steer one way at work. You steer another at home. You steer with friends. Over time, these routes divide. When you look in a mirror, you might see a stranger. Recall Alex. Alex studied music and joined a band. He toured for years and adopted a stage name. He felt alive with each show when the band broke up. He taught math at a local school. He answered equations all day. He did not touch a guitar for months. He asked, "Which Alex is real? The one on stage or the one at the chalkboard?" He felt empty. Drift can cause pain. You lose touch with purpose. You feel fake. You hide parts that feel weak. You layer on masks. Each mask divides you from your core. Test drift by listing roles. Write each as a name or phrase. For instance, Jordan the manager, Jordan the parent, Jordan the friend. Next to each, note actions or rules. Under manager, you set goals and run meetings. Under parent, you share chores and keep respect. Under friend, you listen and share laughter. Review the list. Notice if any role asks you to act against your values. You might scare a team to hit targets. You might avoid truth at home. That gap shows drift.
Identity rests on a core that holds values. Values guide choices. When actions shift too fast, drift cracks the core. You might hide truths or lie to avoid conflict. You can drift from the core. Therapists use terms like persona and ego. Persona is the mask you wear in public. Ego holds your inner sense. If persona runs wild, ego may shrink. You might feel hollow or lost. Mindfulness can help. When you brush your teeth, notice the person in the mirror. See which role comes to mind. Ask, will I stay true to my values today? Let that question root you. When drift feels strong, name your core value. Speak it out. I choose kindness. Offer kindness in meetings and at home. Each act links roles to core. Imagine you join a startup. You code and pitch ideas. You chase growth. You work late. You skip family dinners. Months pass. You visit a mall and see a toy that scared you as a child. You pause. You ask, do I still carry that fear, or did I trade it for ambition? Identity drift appears in culture too. You learn new norms. You adopt new speech. You drop your old accent. You gain acceptance. You lose closeness to your roots. You feel split. You hold two mindsets. That drift feels like living in a house with two kitchens. You cannot cook freely in both. Track drift with a journal each evening. Note when you felt clear and when you felt off. For example, I told my boss the truth. I felt at peace. Or, I stayed silent at dinner. I felt uneasy. Do this for a week. Read entries. You will spot patterns. You will see where you honor values and where you chase a mask. In therapy, ask, what do you need right now? Which self feels ignored? What part of me lost ground today? You answer with stories. I spoke up in my team. I stayed silent with friends. Your stories map drift. Drift does not always break you. It can guide growth. Imagine a writer who dreamed of novels. She worked as a banker, but wrote paragraphs by night. Her banker life felt safe. Her writer life felt risky. She saved money and left banking. She wrote full-time. She felt her identity align with her core. Consider a soldier who returns home. She trained under strict rules. At home, she drives with no schedule. She feels unmoored. She asks, who am I off base? She restores self by small acts. She makes her bed each morning and plans her day. Those routines echo her core. They root her. Identity drift can feel like clouds on a windy day. Sometimes clouds pass. You see blue sky. You feel at peace. Sometimes clouds cover the sun. You feel cold. You can chase a new job or new hobby. Each chase shifts your path. You may circle back or sail ahead. Either way, track your course by asking, do I stand by my values? At night, when you question who you are, answer with your values. Choose one word, rest on it. Let that word rise when roles clash. Let that word wake with you. Let that word guide your actions. Let that word steer your ship. If you question who you are each night, learn from the tension. Explore which self feels real. Steer your path toward your core. Each morning you wake, carry your value with you, and know where you will head.